Ready to go, Chair.
Right, thank you, Wendy. Make sure everything's all according to plan. Right, good. I've just got a blank screen at the moment. So welcome everybody to this, and myself. I am County Councillor Ruth Edwards, Chair of the Planning Committee. Welcome to all the public, the officers and members. This Planning Committee, which is being held fully remotely. The meeting is being held in accordance with emergency legislation that enables the Council to hold this meeting remotely, alongside the Council Constitution, and ensures that the Council can continue to operate and make democratic decisions in an open and transparent way. I would like to remind members that this meeting is still being live streamed to the public, and can I request that you all switch off your cameras and mute your microphones when you are not speaking directly to the committee, to ensure that there is no unnecessary background noise. All sections of the Members' Code of Conduct will apply to members in this virtual meeting environment and are as applicable now as they are in what we would have been having as a traditional meeting setting. Can I also remind members of the meeting to ensure that their chat functionality is switched on, and should they wish to speak on a particular item on the agenda, to make their request clear in that area, and I will invite you to speak at the relevant point in the meeting, where you would then unmute your microphone and switch your camera back on. Decisions of this remote committee will hold the same weight as a decision of a normal planning committee, provided that the meeting remains quorate and meets its legislative requirement to make a decision, regardless of whether a member of this meeting is unable to cast their vote due to technical issues, and we do get those from time to time. The decision of the committee will remain valid. Thank you all very much. I do have to read that out to make it clear to those who are perhaps tuning in for the first time. So I will, first of all, I will take apologies for absence, please.
No apologies received, Chair.
Right, thank you, Richard. Declarations of interest, please.
Chair,
I've lost any picture at all on my screen.
Chair, any as and when?
Thank you, Councillor Evans. And I would like to know if there's anybody who's got any question of accuracy of the last minutes of the meeting that you've all had. Is there any question of accuracy at all?
Can we take them as read, Chair?
If there's nobody raising any point, I will have it moved by you, Councillor Evans, and do you have a seconder for the minutes?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy, and I will duly sign those at the end of the meeting. Thank you very much. We will now go on, and I'll draw your attention to the fact that one of the items on the agenda, 00703 at Pulmeric, Chepstow, has been withdrawn from the agenda for today, so we won't be discussing that item on the agenda. Also, as we've got public speaking today, we won't take it in order as you've had on your printed agenda, and the first item on the agenda now to be discussed is 00712, and that is at Chepstow, Shanoughton, I suppose, really, at Monnickbach. Right, Phil, are you doing that one, please?
I am, Chair, yeah. Can everyone hear me? Yeah.
Yes, I can.
Excellent. Okay, I'll share my screen now and run through the presentation with you. Oh, it's on there. Okay, right. A bit slow. Right. Okay. Right.
That's fine, Phil.
There we go. Okay, so this first application.
Introduce yourself first, please, Phil, because they won't know who you are.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. My name's Philip Thomas and Development Services Manager with Monmouthshire County Council. The first application is, as the Chair has said, is the application 00712 at Monnickbach, just off Wayloyd Lane. Apologies for the misspelling of Monet Bark in the presentation there. So the application seeks planning permission for the creation and partial retention of a new vehicular access into a field. That broadly shows that demarcation there, and the plan shows where it is located, near where the Wayloyd Lane to the left of that area meets the B4235 Usk Road. I'll show you some more pictures in a moment. That shows the alignment. The purple line shows the alignment of the definitive right-of-way that runs across the field where the access is proposed to come in. It's not actually following that alignment. That alignment is run through a neighbour's garden at the moment. So it's been waymarked further to the north and east of that particular location, and has been in that location for many years, although not formalised. That's the proposal there. So again, I'll show you some slides of what the site looks like at the moment. It doesn't look like that, but the proposal is to set back the access with gates set back 13 metres from the edge of the carriageway, 5 metres of a hard bituminous surface for 5 metres from the edge of the B road, and then a further 8 metres then to the gates, which would be in a sort of hardcore material. The turning area and rest of the track that runs up towards where that TPO tree is would be removed. You'll see that area in the pictures in a moment, and you'll notice that the definitive route of the public right-of-way is unaffected then by this actual layout and arrangement. That's it as it looks at the moment. The location of the gate is where the original gate was, which I'll show you again in another photo, but the access is widened and the track leads up into the field, but that would be curtailed back, as I've said, for 13 metres and not extended right up into the field towards the tree. And that's looking back towards the road and the garden of the neighbour to the left. So all of that area in immediate foreground there would be taken up and restored to grass. And that's the area in the area to the right hand side. You can see what looks like the tree that's affected, so that area would again be taken up and returned to grass. And then that's looking towards the main road again. You'll see where the stile and finger post are, where the right of way has been sort of removed and relocated. And that's an original picture of how it looked before the works was done in the summer or spring. So you can see where the field gate access was. So yeah, that was the previous arrangement. So the field has always had an access to it. So those are the key issues. So if I run through the merits of the application, the plans, as I've said, have now been amended to indicate the upper part of the track and turning area will be removed. The plans detail that the original point of access at the northern end of the track, adjacent to the B road, will be increased to 5 metres wide. And at the time of the case officer's inspection, the access was defined by the original gate and newly installed post and wire fence, as we could see from one of the photographs. It's proposed that a 3.6 metre wide gate be repositioned 13 metres into the field with a new post and wire fence and hedgerow provided alongside the eastern side of the access, and a new connecting fence provided from the western side of the gate to the party boundary with Wayside House to the west, and a 5 metre deep solid surface entrance apron, either concrete or tarmac, will be provided adjacent to the rear edge of the B road carriageway. And following discussions, the applicant has confirmed that they intend to use the land for the grazing of animals, with daily welfare visits undertaken. The latest plans submitted in support of the application, as I've said, indicate that the upper element of the track and turning area to be removed. The application is therefore the revised access arrangements, including the tarmac hard standing created in front of the gates. Being mindful of the latest site plan, which indicates a significant reduction in the extent of the hard surface and its positioning relative to the boundary, it's considered that the visual impact created would not be so detrimental to the overall character and appearance of the area to warrant refusal, and nor would its use lead to an increased level of noise disturbance, disruption, increased overlooking or loss of privacy relative to the original access arrangement. Members of the public have raised concerns that the works would exacerbate the existing highway safety situation, encourage use of the site by large and slow-moving vehicles, and may further reduce visibility for users of the Waylode Lane junction. In response to the above, it must be noted that prior to any works taking place, the field did benefit from a gated access with drop curbs in the northern boundary, directly adjacent to the highway verge of the Waylode Lane junction. Whilst photographic information indicates the gateway during 2009, it is likely that it's been in place for longer. The landowners are therefore able to use the gateway for an unlimited number of trips with any type or size of vehicle without further reference to the council. Given the close position of the gate relative to the highway and its limited width, it is likely that visiting vehicles would have stopped on the road or highway verge whilst the gate was opened, with the potential for large or towed vehicles having to swing out into the opposite carriageway in order to undertake the manoeuvre. Alternatively, visiting vehicles would have remained parked on the verge, which forms part of the visibility display of the Waylode Lane junction. And thus, the proposed setback of the access to allow a vehicle and trailer to stand off the road would provide an improvement to the current arrangement, and our highways colleagues have no objection to the proposal. Following a review of the initial statutory consultation responses, amended plans have been received indicating the definitive route of the public right-of-way, which would remain unobstructed. The applicant has also identified that they would prefer the path to follow the definitive route rather than the one indicated by the finger post on site. In the light of the amended plans, the council's rights-of-way officer has raised no objection to the application, subject to the imposition of advisory notes relating to the route of the path being maintained clear of obstruction. In any case, whether the right-of-way is returned to the definitive route, which runs through a neighbour's garden, or stays along its current informal alignment, the proposed access works would not obstruct the public footpath. Following initial concerns from the council's tree officer, the applicant has agreed to remove the turning area and upper element of the track that are close to a protected oak tree. And such alterations overcome the previous objection from the tree officer, subject to the removal works under the canopy being undertaken by hand, as opposed to mechanical removal, and that would be conditioned. So we'd recommend approval of this application. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much for that very detailed outlook on that actual application, Phil. I believe the ward member is Councillor Brown. If you wish to comment now, please, first of all, Councillor Brown. I'm sorry, I believe we've got somebody who wants to speak. Anyway, is it a Mr. Ian Martin? Is he the councillor?
Hi, Chair, it's Craig O'Connor.
Is he the community councillor that wishes to speak?
Yes, it's a statement to be read out on behalf of the community council. I'm happy to read it out, Chair.
So you're reading it out?
Yes,
right,
Chair.
Thank you, Craig. Go ahead.
Just to introduce myself, I'm Craig O'Connor, Head of Planning in Monmouthshire. I'm going to be reading out a statement made by Councillor Ian Martin, which outlines representations from Shire Newton Community Council. So this is Shire Newton's comments on the planning application. In our response on the 7th of August, Shire Newton Community Council highlighted 4 issues which require updating. 1, highway safety. We remain concerned as to at least 6 neighbours that widening the access risks greater usage, including larger, longer vehicles and or machinery requiring a wide turning circle and very slow speed on exit from the site. This on a blind bend and at the junction of the B4523 with Waylode Lane, thereby creating a considerable road safety hazard to other road users, particularly the many cyclists and motorcyclists. We maintain our objection to the application on the grounds of highway safety. Second point, the route of footpath 17. Having referred to the map showing the legal defined footpath, we observe that the route of footpath 17 has been abandoned through the site. The public have used an established unrecorded footpath for at least 40 years. We understand that in the 1980s, MCC erected a footpath, steps and sign for this alternative footpath. The attached plan shows the abandoned and alternative footpaths as best we can illustrate them. We agree with the footpaths officer in this report of the 30th of October that the abandoned footpath cannot be used on its legal recorded alignment. We understand that the footpaths officer does now have concerns over the footpath roof and route, and the planning officer's report that he has no objection is no longer correct. Any proposal to reopen the abandoned footpath would be heavily criticised by the local community for its negative impact on our environment and posing a safety threat, as it would emerge on the B4523 on the blind bend mentioned above. The adverse gradient at the bottom of Wayload Lane causes traffic travelling in both directions to use that side of the road. Residents have raised the dangers of pedestrians crossing this particular intersection. The alternative footpath is in a safer location. Clarification of the applicant's amended plan is needed as it does not show the installed fence posts extend beyond the canopy of the oak tree and the incorrect in it not following the abandoned footpath. MCC's footpath and protocols guide makes clear the planning authority can consider the existence of the alternative footpath needs to be resolved in association with the consideration of the planning application. We consider the application should be refused or deferred until the footpath roof is settled. As the applicant intends to keep animals on the site, then if the committee is minded to give consent, we would request that the alternative footpath be protected and fenced for the safety of the public. Point number 3, tree preservation orders. We endorse the tree preservation officer's site requirements. Point number 4, removal of the hedgerows. If the committee is minded to give consent, we would request that the replanting and nurturing of the hedgerows and the tree preservation officer recommendations be included as conditions. We consider the application should be refused on the above grounds, or at the very least deferred, pending resolution of the route of the footpath. The Community Council's comments has also been provided to members as part of late correspondence, so you can read that statement in full. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Craig. Well, actually, we seem to have discussed all about a footpath, which is not a planning issue that we're dealing with today anyway. I've taken it all on board, and I'm sure all the members have also. Councillor Brown, I believe you wish to speak on this application.
Yes, please, Chair. Yeah. Just going through the history of this application. Sorry, can you see me okay?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, the history of this application is that there was until recently a barely noticeable or hardly used standard agricultural gate to this field outside the development boundary for Shire Newton and close to Wayside House at the bottom of Wayload Lane, by all accounts rarely and very occasionally used. I learnt that the access was being virtually doubled with a JCB used on a bank holiday weekend with excavation works including the removal of hedgerows and piling of stones by protected trees. Hence this is a retrospective application following a request for the original access and hedgerow to be restored. I was hoping that action would be taken to ensure that the gate and the hedgerow removed were restored, or alternatively that the officer recommendation would be refusal in view of its dangerous highway location, as it has in other access applications close to blind bends on the B4235. The access is extremely close to the exit to and from Wayload Lane. There is a very sharp drop and the visibility of Wayload Lane is limited and obstructed onto the B4235. The height and camber of the road is such that it is difficult to exit onto the from Wayload Lane onto the B4235 without going on the other side of the road, or if you're coming back to do the same thing. Until you've actually exited and driven to and from the bottom of Wayload Lane onto the B4235, then you cannot fully understand how bad it is and the angle and drop onto the B4235. In addition, the site is close to a sharp blind bend and in an area noted as hazardous due to the double no passing hazard lines. It is also a road known to be frequented by fast motorcyclists, and I've heard from a resident on Wayload Lane how in the last year or two they went to the aid of a motorcyclist who had come off there. The windy roads on the B4235 is unfortunately a magnet to motorcyclists and fast moving bikers coming across a slow horse box turning in on a blind bend may well prove to be an accident hazard. One of the highway arguments may be based on no more usage than currently. However, the report refers to the expected daily use now of this site, which will increase its usage by 100% in what can only be described as a very dangerous access. Highways have tried to improve this terrible situation by stating that the gate should be placed at least 12 metres from the highway. The applicant's plan states that this is 11 metres back from the road, but there is no highway condition on there being no gate until 13 metres back to help with the free flow of traffic, and this should be stated as a definite highway gate condition. It needs a condition such as the field gate should be set back a minimum of 12 metres, in brackets 30 metres in the plans, from the edge of the adjoining highway, and should be constructed to be incapable of opening outwards towards the highway. This is to ensure that any vehicles serving the site can be removed from the highway when opening and closing the field gate, in the interests of highway safety and free flow traffic along the B435 in accordance with LDP policy MV1, and that should be added as a condition. In addition, the original plan that we haven't seen but in the committee went back to the end of the field, as this was where the loose stone drive has already been placed. This needs to be shortened slightly to avoid any harm to the oak tree. However, as a 9.2 metre horse box will be entering the field, then it will also need to still have a turning circle, which it did have in the original plan, which has been removed in the amended plan. It needs to have a defined turning circle, so a long horse box will not be reversing onto this busy hazardous road and be able to go out, so it can go out in forward gear as per the original plan for this application, which needs to be scaled up. The plan shows footpath 17, however this abandoned footpath has not been used since the 1980s, as MCC erected a stile and signpost for an alternative safer route in the middle of the field, which has been used by local people since the 1980s. The regular use of this path can be seen from its appearance on Google Maps, and the community wish to continue to use it as a safer route. I understand that the current footpath was diverted at least 35 years ago. According to local knowledge, Wayside House was owned by the applicant and this field about 40 years ago. The garden was extended into the field and Wayside House hedged and fenced. An alternative safe and public right-of-way in the middle of the field was established at least 35 years ago. And as already stated, MCC erected a stile and finger post. Wayside House was then sold about 30 years ago to its current owner. I believe that in view of the MCC actions, there is a strong moral, if not legal duty, for this to be confirmed by a diverted path order as part and parcel of this application. Google Maps shows the visual appearance of this well-used informal PROW. There will be considerable community concerns if this current route is not maintained, and believe that the planning committee should take account of this and look at the bigger picture. I would like the application to be deferred on the planning grounds that the plan produced has been described as rubbish. It is not properly to scale or even accurate, as I have been given different dimensions on it, and the applicant's original plan had a turning circle in it which is no longer there, and believe that on highway safety grounds it needs to be included, as long vehicles need to come out in forward gear. It will be sensible at the same time as providing the improved highway issue on planning grounds to defer the application to also consider at the same time a path order to divert this footpath in its current usage. So what I'm arguing, that a far better solution to this application will be for the original plan submitted by the applicant to be maintained with a turning circle, but slightly shorter if possible, to avoid the tree issues, and a condition in planning that the footpath order should cover the diverted and used route. Footpath 17 is not used and it comes into a field in an unsafe location at the bottom of Wayload Lane. If the turning circles are not mapped out and planned, then turning may impact the current pedestrian route. I would like the committee to consider a deferral in relation to this application, and I would like to speak again prior to the vote. You've already said, Chair, that the footpath isn't a planning matter, but there is actually an MCC document on countryside access and protocol policy, which does actually state in that Monmouthshire County Council document that the footpaths are the consideration of footpaths is a material consideration in planning matters. Thank you. So if I could come back afterwards, and if there's no deferral, then I would like to request a refusal. Thank you.
Right.
On highway safety grounds.
Thank you. I can't quite understand where you more or less insisted on a turning circle. Otherwise, every farm gate that comes onto a lane or road anywhere in the county would want a big area marked out so they could turn around and come out with forward gear. Well, that certainly isn't appropriate in most instances, and most people have got the field to turn around in and come out in a forward gear.
This is on a very, very dangerous short bend.
In our own locality, and usually if you are moving stock or something, if there is an instance in connection to a main road, you make sure that you've got extra farm hands or whatever to make sure of highway safety. I've done it myself heaps of times.
Chairman, I'm asking just for the original plan, which is a better plan, to be considered by the committee instead, and a deferral for that reason on the grounds of highway safety. Thank you.
Well, I personally, I will now go ahead and ask what other committee members wish to comment on before I say any more at all to the committee. Who wishes to speak now? I do not have a show of hands. Hang on.
Mine's up, Chair.
Right. First of all, I've got Councillor Easton, then I've got Councillor Phil Murphy. Right, Councillor Easton.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I missed a chunk of what Louise was saying. My sound went, but I got the gist of it. And really, I'm coming at it from the similar point that Councillor Brown is mentioning. The question I ask is about the definitive map on the public right of way. It's 380/17/1, apparently abandoned some time ago. And I do believe that the definitive map needs to be referred to for the footpath to be considered properly in its state with the rights of way officers before we carry on with this application. I think that's what Louise was saying basically, so I won't repeat everything she said, but I believe that we should defer this until the fact that the footpath is sorted, which has nothing really to do with the planning committee, but it is a material matter to do with the public realm, and perhaps that should go to licensing committee as well.
Thank you for seconding my request for deferral.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Murphy, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And on that point, can we just have, I see Phil Thomas has put his hand up, maybe yes. He can confirm it, but can we have more clarity over this footpath issue? In the early part of this this discussion, it was stated that the footpath wasn't a material consideration in this application. So if Councillor Brown and anybody else is looking for a deferral on that basis, I don't see how that can happen. But I would like to understand how that can be regularised.
Sorry, I was also, just to clarify, I was also asking for a deferral with regard to highway plans and also the fact that the plan is out of scale.
Yeah, well, I know that, and I was about to say a bit more, but anyway, there you are. I think this is considerable betterment. It's the existing arrangement and the original arrangement could have led to far more highways issues than there actually are. But one question I would have about the access. There's a 5-metre visibility display there, but it strikes me that any vehicle going along and wishing to turn left into that space, doesn't matter about turning right because they're parked in the road anyway. But anybody turning left into that space could benefit from a slightly wider visibility display, almost a deceleration lane, but obviously not to that extent. And I just wondered if that had been considered by officers and whether highways would have any thoughts on that. Obviously, we haven't got anybody from highways here today, but officers might be able to help with that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Phil. I believe I won't speak now myself. Next, Phil, do you wish to comment on what Councillor Murphy has highlighted?
Yes, please. Although I would say that Mark's here, Mark Davis from Highways, so Mark can comment on any technical highway issues in terms of highway safety. But if I just comment on a couple of things that Councillor Brown raised, in terms of, and Councillor Easton to some extent, in terms of the public right of way, it is material to some extent, but what we have a case of here, there is actually a circular actually in terms of planning and public rights of way. What we've got to be clear on is whether the development impacts on the public right of way. The definitive line of the right of way runs through the neighbour's garden and across the field. It's not actually impacted by this particular proposal, even extended back with the gates 13 metres. It's beyond that again. So as proposed at the moment, without the extended access track and turning circle, there's absolutely no impact on the definitive route. Where it is also temporarily waymarked, and has been, when I say temporarily, for many years, that is also not impacted on by this development. So I'm extremely dubious about deferring the application on the basis that the right of way needs to be sorted out. If there's a debate about whether the right of way needs to be put back to its definitive route or is maintained and formalised along its current used route, that's a matter entirely for the public right of way team and not a matter then for this planning application, in a sense that this proposal does not impact on the route of the right of way, whichever one you look at. So that's what we'd have to say about that particular issue. And also in terms of picking up on what Councillor Brown said about there'd be a far more intensive use of this access. With the existing access, they could use the field more intensively by using the existing access and reverting back to that. So that's not really a particularly plausible argument, really. And we would suggest that even with the revised arrangements, these are very much a betterment, as Councillor Murphy has said. And I'll let Mark come in terms of any other highway safety aspects that have been raised so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Mark, I welcome. Introduce yourself, please, Mark.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's Mark Davis, Highway Development Manager for Monmouthshire County Council. To be fair, members, I can only reiterate what my planning colleagues have said in respect that this application is for an amendment to what is an existing field access, and I emphasise field in the context of this application. So it is an existing access, and that could have been used for whatever purpose in terms of the field itself. The applicant has come forward with minor amendments to improve, in my opinion, and that of the Highway Authority, the safety of the access and egress from that field. By setting the gates back 12 metres, as my planning colleagues and as some members have alluded, enables all agricultural vehicles to open the gates and not wait on the public highway. And in itself, that is a significant highway safety improvement. Also, it enables them to leave the site and still close the gates, which is a safety improvement for livestock within the field as well. The provision of a hard apron of 5 metres will greatly reduce the likelihood of any loose material, i.e. gravel, being dragged onto the public highway, and more importantly, any mud from the field as well. So all the improvements that the applicant has put forward, I think we should embrace and promote in terms of the use of the field more and it being used more safely. And again, I'm going to repeat myself, they could still use that field with no improvements whatsoever. So I've got no grounds to sustain an objection, period, on this application, and I welcome any improvements that the applicant has put forward. I trust that's enough, Chair.
Yes, that's very, very clear, and I'm sure all of members of the committee understand that. Technically, as a farmer, I certainly understand it. Councillor Harris, I think you wish to speak next, please. Councillor
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry, a bit slow.
That's all right.
Clicking the buttons. I'm not sure if Councillor Brown really wants to see no access whatsoever to the field, because she's arguing very strongly against the counter argument that we've just heard. if she doesn't want any access at all, then, you know, I certainly do not understand that. If she wants to revert to the existing, sorry, the original access, as has just been mentioned, that is dangerous on this bend. And then obviously we have the current application, which is far safer. Vehicles can get off the road and do whatever is necessary to get into the field safely, being away from the road. I'm mystified by the resistance to this application, I must admit, and I certainly will not be supporting any deferral or refusal. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harris. I can't see why actually that this really needed to come to committee, as all this sort of thing with the applicant has been discussed. He is obliged by doing a great improvement to the entrance to the field, and also it will, as Mark said, because you know, you get mud on wheels with that bit of distance out onto the main road, it will sort of make that a lot better and much safer. And it isn't always necessary to have say a Land Rover truck towing a trailer or anything into the field. They could be going in with just the vehicle itself, but it certainly is a lot safer with what they've decided to do. Before we go to the vote, Councillor Brown has asked if she could have a little bit more time, but I please urge you to be brief because we've got a long agenda today, and I will take then your request for deferral, and it has been seconded by Councillor Eason, but we'll take the vote on that first of all after you have commented now, Councillor Brown. Councillor Brown? Councillor Brown, do you still wish to comment before we go to the vote of deferral? Councillor Brown. We seem to have lost Councillor Brown. Councillor Eason, you've raised your hand in the chat bar.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, my concern for deferral was that I did have concerns about the definitive map and the public right-of-way. If the planning officers and the public right-of-way team are satisfied that this has no material effect on the application, my view of deferral was based on that. But equally, I will make a vote. But at the end of the day, will the rights-of-way people, team, forever, bring forward and definitively create the proper right of way? Because I think that, in my mind, causes confusion. Thank you, Chair.
I'm not an expert. Oh, Councillor Brown has now come back in. So, Councillor Brown?
Yeah, sorry, I missed some of that discussion because unfortunately I lost connection for some unknown reason. So I don't know if I could be updated on the discussion that was had. I mean, I was basically arguing that there was the far better.
Did you hear what Mark Davis said?
Sorry, I did hear that, yeah, but I was arguing that the far better solution was the one that the applicant first put forward, which was the plan with the turning circle, and that's the one that I was arguing about. And I think that's been misunderstood, and that's the reason why I was asking for the deferral, because as you see from the pictures, that already has been put in situ, and I was asking for that to be slightly shorter so it wouldn't impact on the tree. And basically I think that would be a more sensible arrangement, and that was the reason I was asking for the deferral. And at the same time, you know, I would hope that the footpath issue could be resolved at the same time. So really that was the reason for asking for the deferral, and it was based upon the original plan that the applicant himself put in.
Well, that obviously is a different thing to what we're dealing with, the application in front of us now today. And I believe highways, as Mark Davis has said, say it's a great improvement, which it is, because they wouldn't necessarily have two pieces of machinery going in
Well,
at the same
I
time.
appreciate that, but Highways have said before about the need for turning circles, and the applicant has already physically provided the turning circle on the site.
Well, I think he's agreed to remove that, and to me it isn't necessary if there's plenty of room in the field to manoeuvre and to go out in a forward gear, and also to have all that sort of hardcore or whatever it is near the tree isn't a good thing. And
Chair, I can't understand why you're arguing so strongly against this application. And I can't also understand why it's very unusual for us to actually have a highways officer in attendance, and hopefully they will be in attendance for all future applications.
When it's necessary.
Every single application that we have. Thank you.
No, but when it's necessary.
Chair, can I come in, please? I think members should show you.
Sorry, can I stop you there, please? Who is that wishing to speak? Because I'm not aware of another hand. Is that Councillor David Evans? Who wishes to speak? Councillor?
Madam Chair, I got my hand up.
I think members should give you a respect as the chair, not argue in a meeting like this.
That's Councillor Evans, I believe. Anyway, I think whenever we have requested Mark Davis of Highways to come to a meeting, if we think he can explain things, he has certainly been in the chamber when we've thought it necessary for being there. This is not the first time that he has been in the meeting. He hasn't always had the need to comment, but if it's needed, he is always there. So we don't always need to have a highways officer in attendance. Councillor Eason, you've got your hand back up again, please.
No, Chair, I made a mistake there. Both of them don't want to speak.
Right, thank you. I will call again on Phil Thomas to really now issue what the applicant is applying for today, not what he had previously suggested. Could I have clarity on that, please, Phil?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was just coming back to the point that Councillor Brown was making about having the turning head included. The scheme has been negotiated to exclude the turning head, and that's what's before members today, as you've said, Chair. So we're endorsing the scheme to members without the turning head, even as amended as suggested by Councillor Brown. We don't feel that that's necessary, and there is scope to manoeuvre and turn around within the field, despite the slope, and come out in a forward gear without the need for the turning head. So that's what's proposed. There'll be a 5 metre apron of a hard or bituminous surface, and then the gates themselves will be set back 13 metres into the site. So it's as per the plan. The plan is as accurate as it needs to be in terms of making the planning application valid. There are dimensions on it, and we could enforce those plans if they are approved. So we're confident about what the proposal is and what the scope of it is. So as I said, we're recommending it for approval. Thank you.
Now that you're there, Phil, has this been been a big discussion on the right of way, public right of way? If there is an issue with that, could Councillor Brown raise that with the Community Council or something to pursue, because it is not part of this application today? Well,
the correct form to and they're already fully aware of it, is via the public rights of way team within Countryside. So they are aware of the issue, and there will then be a process set in place by them following any granted planning permission. But as said, we're confident that the scheme as submitted doesn't impact on the whichever right of way route you take, either the formal one or the informal one.
All right, thank you very much for that, Phil. Councillor Harris now, please.
Sorry, thank you, Madam Chair. No, it was just earlier on there was some discussion about turning circles, and just to point out, it's condition number 2. It's actually within 6 months of the date of this consent, the turning area and the adjoining 13 metres of track within the southern part of the site shall be removed from the site, etc. It's conditioned.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much for being so diligent.
Condition not to be included. So what I'm saying is asking for it to be included. Sorry, I can't see the point.
Phil, can you clarify that point, please?
Yeah, yes, because sorry, Chair. Yeah, because obviously the turning area was put in. It's unauthorised at the moment. It's not part of the scheme. There is a need for that condition to actually grub up the turning circle and reinstate it with grass to be part of the field. And that was negotiated following comments from the tree officer with concerns that it was going to damage the roots of the tree in the long term. So that's really, and there's also an argument about visual impact and not having an overly engineered surface, which is included in the report really as to why we think it's appropriate to not have that area of turning circle and track in the upper part of the field. So that's why that condition is there, it's to tidy that area up and get the engineered surface removed at the top end of the site.
Right, thank you, Phil. You happy with that, Councillor Brown?
Yeah, but I was just explaining why I got lost connection. So thank you, Chair. In relation to the vote on deferral, because I lost connection then.
Right, thank you. And also, it said about planting a hedge and so on. If there is a post and fence on the roadside along the side of the field and it's kept clear of any sort of briars and all that sort of thing, it does aid the visibility from there, because there was no technically a hedge there. It was just briars and brambles that grow up through a wire fence. So Councillor Webb wishes to speak now, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you and good afternoon, everybody. I feel that I just must make this point. We've been 3/4 of an hour on this planning application. Many of the points that have been discussed could have been dealt with before the application came to committee today, and I do object to people talking amongst themselves and not going through you as chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Webb. Like I said, I couldn't understand why it had come to committee, because it had all been agreed with officers beforehand. And as you said, this has taken a lot of time this afternoon. Councillor Brown, you wish to take a vote on deferral of this application, and you did have a seconder with Councillor Eason. Do you still wish to carry on with a vote on deferral?
Yes, please, Chair.
Right. Councillor Eason, are you still going to second that suggestion? Councillor Eason?
Thank you, Chair. On the basis that the issue of the footpath has been dealt with, which was my concern for deferral, no, I can't vote for deferral on the whole of the plan. I did have concerns about the public right of way. So
but you're not seconded the proposal.
I can't second. I could second it on the basis of the footpath, which they say has been cleared. So no, I can't support the rest of the plan.
Councillor Brown,
for the rest of the plan, sorry.
I will ask Councillor Brown if you have anyone else in the committee to second your suggestion. It doesn't look as if there is a seconder at all for that. So we will go down now to the vote, as there is no deferral or a seconded for it. If we haven't got a seconded, we cannot go for the vote of deferral. So we will now go to a vote of the recommendation of approving the application.
Sorry, Chairman, prior to you doing so, I did mention about the need for the condition on the setback, the minimum of 12 metres or 30 metres in place. I did read out a potential condition on that. Because that's what the highway recommendation was. It was that the field gate should be set back a minimum of 12 metres or 30 metres in the plan from the edge of the adjoining carriageway and should be constructed to be incapable of opening outwards towards the highway, and the reason obviously to ensure highway safety.
I will take Phil. Phil can update you exactly on that condition. Councillor Brown. Phil?
Yes, we can include that condition. I was going to say it's covered by the submitted drawings and there's a condition to comply with those, but I suppose in future they could move the gates nearer to the highway, and then if they were less than a metre high, then it would be permitted development. So we could ensure that they're maintained as such in the manner that Councillor Brown has described. So yeah, we can certainly include that condition. Yeah.
Thank you, Phil. Happy now, Councillor Brown. Do you wish to move, please?
Yeah, I'll move for refusal, please.
Right, thank you. Anybody else wishing to second for a refusal? No, not by the seams of it. So I will now ask for a show of hands in the chat bar now for approval of the recommendation. I shall ask Denzel to give the result of the vote.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We've had 12 responses there, 10 for approval, 1 against and 1 abstention. So that's quite clearly passed.
Right, thank you very much indeed for that, Denzel. We will now go on to the next application. This again is not in the order on the agenda. This is 00875 and this is Church Farm, Church Cottage Lane, Wolves Newton. I believe, are you doing this one, Phil, as well?
Yep.
Right, thank you, Phil.
That's my one. Yeah, I'll just get it to the first slide and there we go. Can everyone see that?
Yes, thank you, Phil.
Okay, thank you. So this is an application to convert and extend some agricultural or stable buildings to self-contained holiday lets at Church Farm, Church Cottage Lane, Wolves Newton. The two buildings forming the development site are positioned on the eastern side of an existing farmyard complex that also includes a large steel portal frame building and are immediately to the north of Church Cottage, Wolves Newton, as you can see from that slide there in front of you. Access to the site is currently gained via a set of double gates in the eastern boundary that leads on to an unmade track that provides access to a number of residential properties to the north of the site. And during 2019, consent was granted for the erection of a 3-foot high wall to the east of the stable, which I'll show you in a picture in a moment, and formation of a new access track within the southwestern part of the site. And those applications were agricultural notifications that were approved. So I'll just show you some of the pictures now. So that's the application site outlined in red. In fact, it should extend further east than that. That's something that we put together rather than the applicant. That's the existing building arrangement with the timber building that's nearer the lane in the south elevation there. You can see it's lower than the block building to be retained, and that would be the finished building. So retain the block building, which is in the upper picture on the right hand side, and then there would be a new build to its left nearer the lane to accommodate the two holiday lets, and it would have the appearance of a sort of almost like utilitarian stable block after the event. That's Church Cottage to the left, and that's the lane that goes up, and the buildings are beyond the Church Cottage and the lane there. You can see part of that wall there off the lane to the left of the to the left of the lane, but to the right of the buildings. Those are the two buildings. So that timber one would be removed and the blockwork one would be converted, and the extension would be formed in place of the timber building. You can see that wall there that was built under the agricultural notification. And then there's access into the farmyard via those gates off the lane that's in third-party ownership. And then that's another shot of the buildings to be converted and one to be demolished. Another one. And another close-up, and that shows with the wall that's been constructed. And then this is runs through the farmyard, and then that would be the access through to the site off the lane near Church Cottage and Red House. And that shows the access running out down through towards the through the farmyard and towards Church Cottage, and that's where it comes out and shares that part of the access with Church Cottage onto the lane there. That's it, looking back the other way. And that's where it comes out formally onto the lane, and that's the driveway to Red House. And it's looking further along the lane, away from the site. And then again. So this would be the access, as I said, looking back the other way towards where the as to how the holiday lets would be accessed. So those are the key issues. So they're obviously positioned in the open countryside. They're in a little group, as you can see, with the two properties close by, the two dwellings close by, although not related to the actual, not owned by the applicant. The small farm complex is run as a farm, a part of a larger farm, that is. The conversion of the existing concrete block building would be subject to a number of alterations to the windows and doors, as you've seen. And externally, the extension would be finished with timber shiplap boarding with 4 stable type window and door openings and a smaller pedestrian sized window and door opening in the eastern elevation towards the lane. The roof would be clad with slate and a solar panel array provided on the eastern roof plane. Internally, the buildings would be subdivided to create 2 holiday lets, 1 2-bedroom, the other 3. Each unit would benefit from a kitchen, open plan living diner. So I'll just return to the plan so you can picture this better as I describe it. There we go. So yeah, each would benefit from a kitchen, open plan living diner space and a bathroom, as well as obviously the bedrooms. Access to the units would be primarily gained from the western elevation, which would face into the farmyard. A secondary means of escape would be provided in the eastern and northern elevations of the building. Vehicular access would be gained via a recently approved access track in the western part of the site, leading from an unmade lane between Red House and Church Cottage. On-site parking would be provided on the existing yard to the west of the building. Bat mitigation would include 2 bat boxes to be installed on the ash tree to the north of the building and a replacement roof void roost for lesser horseshoe and long-eared bats. The application proposes the conversion and extension of 2 farm buildings to create 2 holiday lets. So the application proposes a tourism use and forms part of a wider agricultural enterprise. So the requirements of LDP policies T2, RE3 and RE6 are applicable. With regards to the current application, it's considered the application proposes a small-scale tourism development that would seek to diversify the operations of an existing agricultural enterprise. Although the applicant does not currently live on this part of the farm, it does form part of a wider active agricultural enterprise, with the applicants visiting the site on a regular, if not daily basis. While the retention, conversion and extension of such modern type buildings would normally be resisted, an exception for such purposes is granted where the proposal would support the diversification of an agricultural enterprise. In this case, the applicants are active in farming the land and the proposals are small scale and complementary to this use. They seek to convert part of the building and rebuild a section as there are no other suitable buildings on the site. The principle of the proposal is therefore considered compliant with national planning policies and policies S8, S10, T2, RE3 and RE6 of the LDP. It's considered that the design, finish and scale of the converted building, including its extension, would appear as converted stable. Whilst it's appreciated that the openings in the western elevation would appear domestic in terms of their scale and overall arrangement, these alterations would replace a number of existing domestic style door and window openings, would only be visible from within the site, and would not be readily apparent from any wider public vantage point. The existing building is functional and utilitarian in its overall external appearance, and the application does provide an opportunity to improve its appearance and create a building that is more harmonious and in keeping with its setting. Subject to conditions to clarify and secure appropriate external materials, the application is considered to be visually acceptable. In terms of traffic movements, which is a key objection from local residents, it would create more noise and disruption for immediate, the argument is that it would create more noise and disruption for immediate neighbours, specifically for Red House, which is set slightly below the level of the lane. It is acknowledged that relative to the existing arrangement, the development proposed would generate an increased number of movements, which could be heard from the closest dwellings. However, these would be domestic in scale, and given the small track width of the lane, it is likely that vehicles would be travelling very slowly. It's considered that number of movements generated would not be so disruptive or detrimental to amenity to warrant refusal. Although objections have been raised regarding works undertaken to the track to the east of the complex following the construction of a wall approved as part of a previous application, and which incidentally could be regarded as permitted development under Part 2 of the General Permitted Development Order, the development would not be served from that particular access. It would be served from the access to the rear, if you like. All issues regarding the repositioning of the track and trespass on third-party land are a private legal matter and are not material to the determination of this application. Neither are material are issues over access rights over the lane that we saw in the photos between Church Cottage and Red House. There's a dispute regarding the access rights over that track, but that is again a civil matter for both parties to conclude outside the planning application. The Highway Authority considers that the existing access to the site is suitable to accommodate the additional traffic, which would be very limited by the proposed development. The Highway Authority is also satisfied that there is sufficient space within the existing farmyard to provide adequate parking. So to conclude, although the buildings are simple and utilitarian at present in their overall form and external design, the principle of converting such spaces and providing new tourism accommodation is supported by policy. It's considered that the application proposes a scale and nature of development that would not have a significantly adverse impact on the character and appearance of the area, the amenity of those living closest to the site, or the highway safety and free flow of traffic. And subject to the imposition of conditions, we would recommend approval of the application. I'd also lastly point out that in order to make sure that the buildings are not sold off once converted to holiday let use, that we would suggest there is a Section 106 agreement in place to secure the holiday lets and tie them to the farm holding at Church Farm, given it's entirely justified as an exception in this instance as an agricultural diversification project under the LDP policies. As I said, we'd recommend approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil, very much indeed. All details clearly explained there. I believe we got local county councillor Bob Greenland who wishes to speak on the application in his ward. Are you with us, Bob, this afternoon?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, I am. But before I begin my time, could I just make a declaration of interest on this one?
Yes.
Because I live in the area and I also attend the local church, which is also mentioned in the application. So my declaration is personal, but non-prejudicial.
Right, thank you, Bob.
To begin with, okay, thank you. I'll begin. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm generally in favour of farm diversification and tourist accommodation where appropriate. But this application has created a lot of controversy, and I've been looking at it closely and its planning history. Now, the building was built in 1988 and it was originally described as a stable, but the applicant has said that it was never used for that purpose, but for sheep. Now, the applicant now lives in Devorton. That's the centre of their farming enterprise, and this is an outlying piece of land. In 2008, planning permission was granted for a new pitched roof, and the agent tells us that new double-skinned walls with window and door openings were built before 2008. That's a very important date because that means that they are now legal, although they weren't applied for planning permission. And yet I think it's also worth remembering that these facilities with the openings and the doorways and the windows were for sheep. In 2018, 10 years later, with the walls now having legal status, the application, there was pre-application discussion with planning officers, but no application took place at that time. Then last year, the wall to which Phil referred to was built, but it was not built in the position which it was granted planning permission, and it was built for cattle handling. And obviously, because it has never been, or one part of it has never been built, it hasn't been used for that purpose. And in fact, it encroaches 1.9 meters at one point onto the adjoining land. But this application is for 2 holiday units. And I have to say that I doubt that this building could have been made lawful had that wall been built in the position for which planning permission was granted, but it was not. And therefore, it is pertinent, I believe, to this planning application. Now, you have to decide this on planning policy, and I would refer you particularly to T2, visitor accommodation. And the first question that it asks in visitor accommodation is, or rather, I should say that what you need to do is to look at the exceptions to T2, and it asks the question, is this an existing and occupied farm property? Well, it doesn't have a farmhouse with it, and it very much has the appearance of derelict farm buildings. In fact, the applicant regards it as almost as such. Now, I'm not saying that sheep are occasionally brought onto the farm, onto this part of the land, but it is not, I would suggest, what we would normally describe as an active farm building. But T2, importantly, has as another part of it, in part B, and I'm going to read this out if I may, Chair. Certainly. The conversion of the buildings of modern construction and materials provided the buildings, this is what is allowed, as long as they are appropriate for residential use, e.g. not modern agriculture, this is a 1988 building, not of substandard quality, I leave you to judge that, nor of incongruous appearance. And then it goes on to say, and they have been used for their intended purpose for a significant period of time. And finally, this is an important sentence, particularly close scrutiny will be given to proposals relating to these buildings less than 10 years old, especially where there has been no change. Now, the point about that is that if the walls are over 10 years old, they have got legal status. But that last sentence does not say that you should not consider anything older than 10 years old. And we all know why that sentence was put in there. Planning application in the countryside is a valuable asset. And we know from past experience that people try to circumnavigate our planning system to get planning permission. And I would ask members to consider very carefully this application and whether it has been done for circumnavigation of the planning rules. And I would like to finally make one point, and that is on design, because this policy T2 does make sure that we have to agree permissions on design. And I would suggest to you that there is no reasonable design in this building. It is very utilitarian, and it is incongruous, as the policy says, in policy terms. Now, a few weeks ago, trees on the boundary of this site, or just beyond the boundary, were felled. And what was then a shielded and not very visible site is now very visible from an adjoining public footpath. And what you will see in this, when this is built, is what appears to be two double patio doors very close together. I think this is an appalling design. I don't think a design can be made to fit in this area, to be on this building, to be perfectly honest. And I therefore do not think it is fit, considering its age, it's modern, I do not think it is fit to be considered for conversion under this policy, and I would therefore ask you members to consider that and refuse it on that basis. I just want to also go on to say that highways officers have said that the access is suitable in their terms. You can have seen from the photographs that it is a very, very narrow access. And if it is accessed, particularly during hours of darkness, it is incredibly difficult for even an ordinary car to get along. And if you had two visitors, one coming and one going, meeting in that lane, it would be extremely difficult. It is not an access that is suitable for quality accommodation, much of which we've got in this site. And from that basis, and the basis of design and the question mark over how this came to be considered in the first place, I would ask members to reject the application. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much for all that detail. You obviously know a lot about it, Bob. Could I ask Councillor Dovey to please turn his camera off? I believe your camera has been on, Councillor Dovey.
How do I do that? Oh, is this it here?
Right. Thank you very much, Councillor Dovey. You've now left the screen at the moment. I believe we have a Councillor Williams who wishes to speak. Is that Community Councillor, Councillor Williams? You're frozen at the moment anyway, if that is you on screen.
Madam Chair, it is him on screen. I was under the impression that he had actually recorded something, but I may be wrong. Oh yes, I think the recording is there and it's waiting to be played.
Right, thank you for that help, Bob.
Madam Chair, yes.
All these technical issues we have to grasp at the moment.
Madam Chair, it's Craig O'Connor, Head of Planning. I'm just about to play the video from Councillor Williams.
Right, thank you, Craig.
2 seconds, just a technical difficulty. Can you just bear with me for a couple of minutes?
Yeah.
Sorry, Madam Chair, this will just
That's
take
quite all right. We're in your hands, Craig.
Can you see that now, Madam Chair?
Yes, I've got the picture of the councillor on my screen.
Brilliant. I'll just press play then. This is Councillor Williams representing Deferral Community Council.
Thank you.
I'm the Community Councillor for Wolves Newton, sitting on Deferral Community Council, and we object to application 00875 at Church Farm. Normally, when we form an opinion on an application like this, we are trying to balance the need to bring diversity and opportunity into the community versus the amenity to the community at large. We believe this application fails on that basis. You'll note that there are already a very large number of well-argued objections from neighbours regarding the suitability of the development as a commercial holiday let. I'm not going to repeat them. We agree with them. In the experience of the council, we've seen better sited and better thought through developments than this struggle to succeed. And on top of that is the particular concern we have about the new access to the development and the upset that its creation has caused. It was opposed from the outset by the Community Council and neighbours, but approved as a permitted development. It's extremely narrow, it compromises access to nearby properties, all of whom have objected, and it can't safely accommodate, in our opinion, the raised levels of traffic which would result from the development and which would also potentially mix farm machinery with inexperienced holidaymakers. I have to say that the cavalier attitude of the applicant has further hardened opinions within the community. This includes extending the eastern boundary of the property some metres into adjoining land and diverting an important existing access track around it, and all without the landowner's permission. There's compelling evidence of that in the files in front of you, so I won't reproduce it. I'll just finish by saying that, in short, Devorden Community Council supports my community's well-considered applications to, well-considered objections to application 00875, and we ask you to refuse approval.
Right, thank you very much, Craig, for playing that video for the members.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just, on your request, now play the objectors' comments, Mr. Marlowe's.
From Mr. Marlowe, is it?
Yes, I'll just get that up on the screen.
Right, thank you, Craig. You continue.
Can you see that on the screen, Madam Chair?
Yes, yes, I can indeed, Craig. Thank you.
I'll just play this message then from Mr. Marlowe, who is representing the objections on the application.
Thank you.
Thank you for allowing us to present to your committee today. This is with reference to conversion of stables to 2 units of holiday accommodation at Church Farm, Wolves Newton, 2020-875, which is adjacent to our own home in Wolves Newton. The application is under farm diversification to encourage tourism in Monmouthshire. This enterprise was until recently just a small holding and has only recently been linked to other farming land in the area. Church Cottage was linked to these buildings, these fields, but it was sold off 20 years ago, so there is no one on site with these buildings, and the site is only visited every few days. The proposed design is visually unattractive and not an improvement on what is already there. The block building, which is described as an agricultural building, was started as a lean-to shed, which 10 years ago was re-roofed. During this re-roofing to create a pitched roof, other alterations took place involving creation of a double-skinned building as it stands at the moment with internal block walls. Domestic window reveals are behind the single skin and domestic doors in place, and plumbing for 2 toilets was installed, so making this building more almost domestic rather than agricultural. The other building is a wooden stable block with attached tack room, which is at least 30 years old and very dilapidated, would have to be completely demolished, rebuilt in block work on the same footprint, and then made to look as if it has wooden cladding. The proposed access is down a narrow track which runs alongside our house. It's to be shared with the farm and the holiday cottages. This is a narrow track with difficult access and twists in the lane. If 2 vehicles were to meet, they would have to reverse 200 meters back to the church. There are no passing places. Recently, our wall was damaged by a vehicle attempting to access, and our external oil supply line was damaged. The only traffic that currently drives up this track is visiting our house or occasionally the back garden of our neighbours. There is an existing access which has been in use for 40 years up a track on the other side, which has very large farm gateways into the farmyard and a large wide 5-bar gate access into the development site. This would be far superior to be continued as the access instead of the narrow track. Recently, many mature trees were felled along the boundary line, which now exposes the site to the public footpath, and from the other side, the site is clearly visible from Wolves Newton Church and the Cobbler's Plain Ridge. We spend our days working in Marlow Vets, employing 26 people in the surgery, and provide 24-hour care for the animals from our home out of hours, so need access. The quality of our life at home, which is a respite from the busy surgery, would be seriously impacted by the creation of these dwellings and the increase in traffic that would result down this narrow lane. Thank you.
Thank you,
Good
Mr.
afternoon. I'm Andy Williams. I'm the Community Councillor.
Thank you, Craig.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's just one more public speaking, the agent's applicant's right to reply.
Yes, thank you. That's, I believe, is Mr. Stuart Lever.
Yeah, I'll just upload that now. Madam Chair, this is an audio message, so you will not see a picture of the person, but there'll be an audio message coming over the screen. I'll
Right,
just
thank you.
share that.
Thank you.
Thank you, members, for allowing me to speak today as agent in respect of this application for conversion of an agricultural building to a holiday let at Church Farm, Devorden. In the first instance, I would like to raise that I'm anticipating objection comments will be made in respect of matters relating to land ownership and other neighbour dispute matters. The committee should be aware that there has been a fractious relationship between the applicants and certain neighbours for many years, and that this application has exacerbated that issue. I would respectfully ask the members to disregard any such comments as not being material to the planning process. Along with a similar line, I anticipate comments in respect of rights of access to the property not having public vehicle rights. Again, this is not material to the application process, but to make the point, we have provided evidence by way of a letter confirming that the road leading to the red line site boundary application area is considered a track with public vehicle rights. A copy of this letter from the Monmouthshire Council solicitor at the time, Margaret Frith, dated 5th of March 2001, has been provided. In terms of the material planning considerations, I don't plan to reiterate what is set out in the officer's report, but I will set out the provenance of my client and their farming business. Again, I have picked up that there are concerns my client would not be considered to be running a legitimate farming business. I can confirm that the applicants run a farming business and have done for the best part of 40 years. The business is run over approximately 179 acres of agricultural land, which is farmed in 4 blocks. There is approximately 40 acres at Church Farm, Devorden, along with a building being proposed for conversion and a larger stock building, which is used for overwintering of cattle. The applicants also farm a farm business tenancy over 75 acres of land at Penarth Farm in Nishan, which is a Monmouthshire County Council farm. In addition, they farm another 50 acres on grazing licences, with 14 acres at the home farm near Devorden. The applicants have approximately 70 head of beef store cattle for finishing, of which a large proportion are sold locally through the butchers in Chepstow. The applicants also have a flock of circa 350 ewes with followers. The applicants have occupied Church Farm, Wolves Newton, since the 1980s, with the building for conversion having been erected since around 1988. The timber building was erected for lambing and as such has been partitioned for such use, with the blockwork addition later added to provide additional capacity and weatherproofing. The building has been used for lambing for many years, but with farming business having grown and changes in agricultural practices such as the scale of machinery, the applicant now lambs in larger sheds off-site. The building is therefore currently underutilised and merely used for the storage of equipment and animal feed. The intention behind the proposals is to convert the currently underutilised building in order to create an additional diversified income stream for the farm. As members will know, the phasing out of a core element of agricultural financial subsidy support in the UK over the coming 5 years, farms will need to diversify in order to generate additional revenue. Whilst the farming business will remain the core business, the provision of holiday let income from this building will provide some stability in cash flow for the business during what will be, without a doubt, to be a turbulent economic period post-COVID and Brexit recovery. I therefore ask members to carefully consider this application and respectfully ask for it to be approved in line with your officer's recommendation. Thank you, members, for listening to me today.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Craig, for playing all those videos and that audio as well. It's very informative for the committee. Obviously, we have to move with these times, and at least we are keeping on doing our applications. I believe Councillor Howard is the first one in the chat bar which has raised his hand to comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And who'd have thought we'd be an hour and a half into a meeting and I'd get to have to say anything at all, but there we are. Okay. Sorry,
on that point, actually, sorry to interrupt you. I think once we have concluded this application, we will take a 10-minute break. All members, please be aware, we'll take 10 minutes break on the conclusion of this application. Thank you, Giles. Carry on.
Thank you, Chair. So it's getting a bit dark here. I'll put the lights on in that break. Yeah, there's 4 points I'd like to make. The first is that there's no site layout plan, and condition 9 seeks to resolve that post consent. And I think since the objections include reference to neighbour amenity, I think that the arrangements of parking, amenity space, boundary treatments and refuse storage are of enough significance that they should not be left to be addressed by a condition. Second point, given the uncertainty about the land ownership, the issues raised by the ward member and the objector's legal representative that I saw in the submissions online, I don't think we can be sure that the requirements of condition 2 could be complied with, i.e. that the development can be carried out in accordance with the plans, and therefore we should not consider granting consent until the extent of the land within the applicant's ownership or control has been clarified. I also note from the application form that certificate B hasn't been completed, and I think that we do have sufficient grounds to query that before determining. Third point is, I suspect the agricultural certificate's not correct, as it states the land in question is not part of an agricultural holding and feels confirmed in the preamble that it proposes a tourism use and forms part of a wider agricultural enterprise. So I think it's probably technically invalid, albeit a small point. But the main thing for me, I support Bob's comments and those of the community members, that the development doesn't demonstrate its accordance with policy T2 and isn't really what I call a sympathetic or appropriate conversion. And the more I've heard about it, the less I like. And I think, Madam Chair, to be brief, I'd move refusal on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Howard. Next in the chat bar is Councillor Maureen Powell, please. Councillor Powell.
Yeah. Oh. Thank you, Chairman. Just one point. I agree with everything that Councillor Howard has just said, but my one concern is that the driveway up to it is so narrow, as you can see from the pictures, and a lot of people when they come on holiday don't bring just ordinary little cars like that. They come in quite big vehicles, 4x4s and things like that, and people carriers. And I don't think that driveway is adequate at all to be used to access to those holiday lets, if they are, and I would second refusal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. Councillor Phil Murphy, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. A couple of things. I'm quite happy that the this, if approved, would be tied into farm holdings through the section 106. I think that's absolutely essential that we do that. But picking up on a few other points, I won't repeat everything that's gone on, but I agree that the design is particularly poor. It isn't that much better than is there at the moment, and I think that a little bit more could have been done with regards to that. But the main point I wanted to raise was one that Mr. Marlowe raised. And he said about an alternative access. A lot of the problems associated with this application seem to revolve around the access. So if there was an alternative access, perhaps that would solve some of the problems. So I don't know whether officers have got any response to that now. If there is a possibility of an alternative access, then I would go for deferment rather than refusal, so that we can actually get that resolved. But I think that's a major point that seems to be hanging over this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Phil. Councillor Powell, you still have your camera switched on, I believe.
Sorry.
Right, that's quite all right. Anybody else wish to comment, please, on this application?
Yes, Madam Chair, if I may. Jim Higginson.
Who is that speaking?
Councillor Jim Higginson.
Right, thank you, Jim. Carry on.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've listened to everything that's been said, and in my opinion, and I appreciate the comments that have been made by Giles in particular, who we know is well into the planning now, and indeed, Bob and a couple others. I don't think that this particular application, is satisfactory to the surroundings it is applicable to. And there are numerous things, and Bob mentioned about various things taking place, being done seemingly without permission, and trees felled, and they're talking about the design and that type of thing, and access. And going on from, I mean, there's been a fair amount of comment made, and all I would like to do is to support what's been said which in fact is against this application. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Higginson. Craig, I believe you've got your hand up again. Do you wish to comment, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, just wanted to come in there and just maybe clarify a few points for the members with regards to the officer's recommendation on this planning application. I agree with what Councillor Howard and Councillor Greenland has said in regards to policy T2, but this application is being supported in terms of agricultural diversification. So within Monmouthshire, we do support our agricultural businesses and ensure that we do allow a certain amount of new build development, which would normally be allowed if it wasn't tied to a farm. That is why we are suggesting that this application, if it was to get planning consent, would be tied to the agricultural business. It's there to supplement the income of the existing farm. So yes, this isn't a building we would normally allow to be converted if a modern utilitarian building, but this is in association with an agricultural business. So that's the policy justification as to why in Monmouthshire we do seek to support our rural enterprise businesses. In terms of the design, yes, I appreciate that it's not the most contemporary modern design of a building, but it has been there to replicate the existing arrangement. So the visual impact of this development would be similar to exactly what's there at the moment. It has been designed that way to be appropriate for the landscape and appropriate for that agricultural setting, and it is grouped with other buildings as we've seen from the photographs. In terms of the trees that have been felled, that wouldn't have required planning consent, so unfortunately we wouldn't be able to request anything with regards to that. The applicant hasn't done anything they didn't have consent to do in relation to that. And there are a couple of elements there which Councillor Howard has mentioned in terms of the conditions for sorting out the exact location of the parking, the bins, which we feel is appropriate to deal with as part of the condition because it is subject to this planning application. And with regards to the civil matter, with regards to land ownership, these are all civil matters for the applicants to deal with. So there are a number of concerns there with regards to land ownership, but these sit outside of the planning. Planning deals with the principle of development, and I think it's for the planning committee to decide whether this land use that has been put before them to use this site for holiday let, is that appropriate and is that acceptable? And obviously as officers we do feel that the recommendation is accurate and it is fair. I would also just like to bring in Phil, my colleague, just to mention on Councillor, if I can, Madam Chair, just to mention on Councillor Murphy's comment with regards to the access.
Right, thank you, Craig. Yeah. Phil?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, in terms of the access, the Red House has approval as an agricultural access, so there could be larger farm vehicles using that potentially. So the use for two limited sized holiday lets is not considered to be detrimental in terms of amenity or highway safety by the planning authority, by officers rather. So that's why we've recommended, and that is what is before members, not the other access that swings to the east of the site. And in fact, I think, and even though the farm's main access is through that route, there are limited access rights for the applicant on that land. It's owned by a third party, and whilst this is not a planning issue in terms of it, it's more of a civil issue. I think they'd have difficulty actually accessing the holiday lets from there, as I think they have access rights for tractors and vehicles like that. Whereas in this access, despite there being some sort of legal dispute with the adjoining landowner at Red House, that they are arguing they have access rights, and that has been investigated, notwithstanding what Councillor Howard has said. When our legal team were involved in that many years ago and more recently. So I think we've taken that element as far as we can in terms of a planning authority looking at something from a legal point of view that now becomes a civil matter between the parties involved. But we feel that the access is acceptable, and Highways have also looked at the access via that route between Church Cottage and Red House as being acceptable within the bounds of this planning application. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Phil. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I was going to endorse what Councillor Phil Murphy said, particularly about access and design, but it looks like the access problem has been sorted as far as it can be legally, and as I say, I was going to support a deferment, but Councillor Murphy also mentioned about design, and maybe I was still, if Councillor Murphy is happy to go for a deferment, I would support it so that we can have further discussion, so that the committee can know a lot more about the access, and also for the applicant to be aware that the mood so far seems to be towards us as a committee refusing this. If we do defer, it will give the applicant food for thought on design and the access as well. So that's just my thoughts. I wait to see what other members say. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Anyone else wish to comment now, please? It's come back to you, Councillor Howard. Councillor Howard.
Yes, sorry, Madam Chair. My laptop's being a little bit slow in terms of pressing the button and something happening. I was just going to say, I think what Phil's suggestion and Roger's comments make sense, and I'm happy to withdraw my suggestion that it be refused for deferral to see if it can be improved on design grounds. I would also ask then the issues I raised about the site layout plan, that they ought to come back as part of that. And we mentioned those arrangements. In the preamble to in the presentation, it did highlight neighbour amenity as a key material consideration, and therefore it is something I think we should think about at this stage. But other than that, yeah, I'm happy to support a move to defer. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Councillor Howard. Craig, please, again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It was just to say that, yes, if members were minded to defer the application, then certainly we could have a conversation with the applicant with regards to design. It would be good to understand that the principle of development is acceptable for members, subject to that design, so that the holiday let could go in that location subject to the design. And we can certainly request the plans that Councillor Howard has suggested with regards to the parking and the waste management, if that is the case.
Thank you, Craig. Myself, I also was concerned about the layout. Much as people love to go and stay on a farm, and it's wonderful if you've lived in a city and think it's great to be out in the countryside, but it is also a very dangerous environment as well, if you were not aware of the dangers that can happen in the countryside with stock and so on. So I would be happier if I saw a certain layout of the parameters of whatever is in that curtilage of that holiday let. So it has been suggested, as I believe, by Councillor Murphy for a deferral, and I believe we've had a seconder. I believe it was Councillor Powell, was it, or was it Councillor Harris? So I'll first take the vote on deferral first of all, please. So could I have it in the chat bar for a deferral for the application, please?
Chair, can I just?
Yes, Phil.
I just suggest that I heard what was said about the alternative access, but if we do decide to defer, could a little bit more work be done on that just to see if it does have any legs?
I think with a deferral, a lot of things have been raised as an issue and they will all be looked at in depth with the applicant, I think, Phil. So you're still wishing to have a deferral and suggested, and could I have the seconder definitely, please?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Harris. Right,
Yeah.
thank you. Because I have a vote in the chat bar for a deferral for the application, please. I believe Councillor Becker has left the committee for a while, so he's not there to place his vote. And I believe Denzel will now give his vote.
Madam Chair, I don't have the facility to vote at the moment.
Who's that speaking, Councillor?
I'm actually back, Chair,
sorry.
Denzel, could you give the results?
Yes, so we've had 13 responses. So even if it looks like 3 members haven't been able to vote, but it's a very clear for deferral. So we've got 11 for deferral, 2 against deferral. So that's quite clearly been deferred.
Right, thank you for that, Denzel. I believe now Phil or Craig could give us some suggestion as to when it will come back to committee.
Well, we will speak to the applicant now. I've taken that with the principle is acceptable and it's been deferred based on design grounds to review the access arrangements and to get site layout plans. Are they the three things, Madam Chair?
Yes, thank you for that, Craig. And with Christmas coming up, whether it will be done in the new year, we'll have to wait to see what your conversation with the applicant is. Anyway, thank you for that. And members, I will now call a halt for 10 minutes. So we shall be back in here now in 10 minutes time, please. Thank you. I don't know if you're all back in attendance yet.
Nobody can see you.
You hear what I said, Ruth? We're going home.
No,
Yeah.
Is everybody back in attendance? Councillor David Evans, what did you wish to say?
I said we're going home.
On the way home.
Well,
We've got a meeting at 6 o'clock.
I think most members are back on board again now. So we'll continue now with the next application. The third application on the agenda today is 01036, and this is at Blackbird Farm, Bluebell Farm, Blackbird Farm as well on the road. Amy, are you doing this?
I am, thank you very much.
Well, Amy, please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Amy Longford. I'm the Heritage and Area Applications Manager. Phil's just going to upload the PowerPoint for us and steer it for me. Thank you very much. So I'll just be up with you in a second. So this application, CM 2020-01036, is for the proposed retention of the access track, repositioning of the access and new gate at Bluebell Farm, Blackbird Farm Road, Earlswood. The application is presented to committee at the request of the local member. So Bluebell Farm is located just northwest of Earlswood. The access track runs south from Old Road, which is the road approximately 400 metres north of Bluebell Farm, as shown on the map and the aerial photograph there. The track can be seen on the aerial photograph as this part of the application is retrospective. The location plan on the next slide shows the farm in more detail, as the proposed track is marked in red and can be seen terminating with Old Road in the top right-hand corner of the field. The application site is currently accessed from the south off Bluebell Road. However, the applicant seeks an alternative means of access specifically for vehicles used in transporting horses, as the current access is unsuitable by being too narrow and with limited passing places. The proposed track is approximately 420 metres long and is proposed to be surfaced in stone with hoggins. The next slide shows the existing site plan and the current arrangement, where the access is directly onto the road at the top corner of the field as shown. A previous application was made in 2017 for the track and the new access in this location. This was refused on the basis that the proposals were overly engineered and out of context with the surrounding. As the proposed plan shows, this application seeks to propose an access arrangement which is far less intrusive, involving removing a section of hedgerow and replanting either side of the new entrance with a timber fence and a galvanised 5-bar metal gate. There is a pull-in proposed in order to provide a safe place for vehicles to stop off of the carriageway for safety. The access is proposed to be 4.5 metres wide, increasing to 16.5 at the edge of the carriageway. The inward opening gate is set 6 metres from the edge of the lane. There are no objections from the highway officers. In fact, the proposed access is considered to provide a significant improvement to the access arrangement, and they do not consider any detrimental impact on the safety or capacity of the immediate highway. The existing access is to be infilled with a hedgerow and a new opening created where the red band of hedgerow is shown. 2 new trees are proposed to be planted, and this can be seen in more detail on the landscaping plan on the next slide. The existing access will then be infilled with native hedgerow as existing. So this landscaping plan shows the position of the proposed new trees, the area of the existing track to be recovered in grass, and then the proposed new access where the red line meets, or the pinky coloured road meets the lane. So the next photograph shows the existing access track at the top portion of the field behind the existing metal gate, and Bluebell Farm can be seen further down in the distance. The next slide shows the current access arrangement. This is looking east down Old Road, and you can see that the access is straight onto the lane here. The next photograph also shows Old Road, again looking east, just further down. And then the last photograph shows the opposite view looking west along Old Road, where the proposed new access will be formed in between the two telegraph poles there. So in summary, the key issues with the application, if we can just return back to the landscape and plan, please. So the consideration of the impact on the wider landscape is considered to be acceptable, and it has been supported by a landscape assessment. The application has reduced the overall impact of the proposed access, addressing the reasons for refusal from the previous application. The reduction in visual impact of the access is now considered to be acceptable and the reasons for refusal mitigated. It's therefore considered to accord with policy LC5 and having an acceptable impact on the wider landscape. It's also considered that the application provides a net benefit in biodiversity terms, as a revised landscaping plan is given closer consideration to an appropriate habitat provision. So in summary, the proposals as modified are considered to overcome the previous reasons for refusal and are now considered to be compliant with the objectives of policies LC5, NE1 and MV1. The application is therefore recommended for approval and subject to the conditions as set out in the officer's report. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Amy. I believe, Craig, we have a statement to be read out by an officer.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This is a statement from Shire Newton Community Council. And both these, well, this statement is within the late correspondence for members to read, but it's also going to be read out. So, Shire Newton Community Council object to this application. The Planning Committee may not be aware of application DC/2017/00607 in virtually identical terms to this application and of the decision by MCC to refuse on the grounds of the following. Point number 1, the proposed access and roadway by virtue of its prominent location would be incongruous features that would be detrimental to the character of the locality. Development would have a significantly detrimental impact on the character and appearance of the rural landscape, contrary to policies DES 1C, E and H, LC1 and LC5 of the LDP. The proposed new access, and it's just the second reason refusal, the proposed new access is an unnecessary engineered incursion across a prominent open area which would not provide a safe, easy access and could potentially harm the safety and convenience of the road users, contrary to policy MV1 and criteria A and E of policy DES 1 of the Monmouthshire Local Development Plan. We are not aware that these planning policies have changed since that refusal. We consider the report by Lime Transport is misconceived because, point 1, it is headed proposed agricultural access and makes reference to agriculture. This is not a farm, but a private residence. Putting a private road across 2 open fields is unjustified. The access is for the movement of the residents' own horses, the keeping of which is not an agricultural activity. Point number 2, it asserts at paragraph 1.1.3, there is no change in use on the farm and the number and type of vehicle movements generated by sites will remain unchanged. Therefore, there is no impact on the wider highway network associated with this additional access. Previously, access was by Blackbird Farm Lane, not Old Road. Old Road is very narrow with limited vision and high hedges, with no passing places back to the main road. See paragraph 2.1.4. There is limited carriageway width at the Old Road, Bell Road crossroads. It is already hazardous for motorists and pedestrians alike. We are disappointed that the highways have not supported MCC's 2017 refusal, that it would not provide a safe, easy access and could potentially harm the safety and convenience of the road users. We further take issue with the landscape and visual appraisal paper, which asserts the proposed track will be indistinguishable from the field appearance. Not only is the track as presently laid immediately apparent because of the open nature of the landscape, but also the use of heavy horse boxes over the track in winter will cause significant ruts, eventually necessitating a more robust road foundation. Despite the earlier refusal decision, the road has now been laid. We consider placing of private roads across fields to be bad farming practice and unnecessary scarring of the landscape. Our recent survey of residents shows they wish to preserve the characteristics of our area, which are essentially farming and rural landscape. This area should again be designated as of special interest, and we consider it is important both for the attraction of tourists and for the benefit of future generations to maintain those characteristics. That's the end of the statement, Madam Chair.
Right, thank you very much for that, Craig, and reading that out on the Community Council's behalf. That's Newton Community Council. I believe now we have the agent who wishes to respond.
Yes, this is the agent's rebuttal and response. So I'll just read that out, Madam Chair.
Sam Courtney, is that correct?
Sam Courtney is the agent acting on behalf of the applicant, yes.
Thank you, Craig.
So this is speaking on behalf of Sam Courtney. I act on behalf of the applicant, Mr. James Howells, in respect of this application for the reposition of an access and gate, translocation of hedging together with new planting and retention of access track leading to his barn/stables. This application follows a previous refusal in 2017 to retain an altered access and track. Members should be aware the application is required to overcome a highway safety issue, allowing the applicant to safely access his barn stables via modified access and track, avoiding safety issues and conflict with neighbouring properties. The applicant keeps horses and occasionally needs to transport them using his horse box. The original route to the south via Blackbird Farm Road is a single track lane which is shared with neighbouring properties, and the applicant's horse box is too large to safely use this route. This has previously resulted in conflict with the applicant's neighbours. The part retrospective nature of this application is due to the fact the applicant was originally advised the works, including the modification of the existing field access, didn't require planning permission. I would like to reassure members and interested parties that the concerns raised by the Community Council and indeed LPA previously have been duly considered within the revised scheme. In light of these and following a process of pre-application consultation with officers, the proposals have been revised and supplemented as follows. A more modest access is now proposed, comprised of galvanised steel farm gate, flanked by timber post and rail fencing together with the hedge planting, which is considered to be more befitting to the rural location. The access is recessed into the field parcel to allow sufficient space for the horse box to access and egress from the property without blocking the lane. This recess offers an additional safety benefit for the provision of additional passing bay for passing traffic. Additional tree and hedge planting is proposed to further soften the visual impact of the proposal and to provide an overall net biodiversity gain. A landscape assessment has been prepared which confirms that any visual impact of the new access is negligible and not out of accord with the rural location, and as such the proposal is considered acceptable in landscape and visual terms. The application is also accompanied by a technical note which confirms that the new access accords with the relevant design standards and provides a more suitable vehicle access for agricultural vehicles, including a large horse box, and will represent an improvement in terms of highway safety. To close, I would like to reassure members and the Community Council this application has been properly considered and has subsequently received officers' support following a process of consultation, taking on board a number of suggestions which made during the process. No objections are raised by any of the specialist consultees, including highways and landscape officers. In light of the above, I would respectfully request that the members support your officer's recommendation for approval in accordance with both national guidance together with policies within the LDP.
Thank you very much, Craig. It does inform us all of what's going on. I believe Councillor Brown, is this in your area again, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. If I could have a few words on this, please.
Yes, certainly.
Thank you. Bluebell Farm itself comprises a detached, I won't be too long, you'll be pleased to hear. Bluebell Farm itself comprises a detached farmhouse with associated curtilage, comprising gardens, an outdoor swimming pool and pool house, equestrian menage, a substantial stable block, and fields currently used as equestrian paddocks. In 2017, this first application was refused by the Planning Authority on the basis of landscape concerns with a detrimental impact on the rural landscape and highways concerns that would potentially harm the safety and convenience of road users. The original application provided a residential urban style gate with a massively long hogging drive being 420 metres long across 2 fields. It has been amended in this application to a standard agricultural style gate, but the hogging drive still remains. The original application was refused on landscape grounds and highway grounds. The landscape assessment submitted by the applicant with this application ends by stating that in essence, this is an agricultural feature in an agricultural landscape and is considered acceptable in landscape and visual terms, but this is actually a drive towards a private residence. However, it is important to bear in mind that the applicant's landscape report also refers to the site being within both the high and in the historic landscape side as outstanding in terms of landscape considerations, and this was put in the applicant's report. The original officer report in relation to the same Hoggin Drive for this retrospective application stated the highway stated in the original report that based on the aforementioned, the Highway Authority consider the proposed access is unnecessary and will create an unnecessary additional conflict point along the public highways. The application site is already served by a suitable access and driveway. This new access and massive Hoggin Drive is unnecessary as there is an existing shared shorter access on Bluebell Farm Lane. Creating a new private residence non-farming access across 2 long fields in an open countryside area across outstanding open country at Old Road, which itself as the original access on Bluebell Farm Lane is a very narrow lane, is unnecessary. It should be noted that in terms of a blot on the landscape, a Google view shows that this creates just as much an impression for a private drive as does the roads themselves. In fact, at 4 metres, this engineered Hoggin Drive track in the middle of 2 long fields in open countryside is actually wider than the single track road for this new access from Old Road. The original officer report in relation to the Hoggin Drive stated that the proposed development is not satisfactorily assimilated in the landscape due to the distance across open countryside, position and material used. The track does not respect the character of the surrounding area and it has an unacceptable adverse impact on the landscape by positioning a domestic access across the field. It is also not required due to the existing access available for use. I think in terms of policy consistency, it's important for local people that there is a policy and decision-making consistency. I would therefore move for refusal of the application on the grounds of the refusal of the original application. I appreciate that the highways access gate has been improved, but this doesn't take away the original reasons for refusal on the basis that there already is an existing access. And I would like, with your permission, Chair, to speak again once I've listened to the committee prior to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Right, I'll wait now for committee. Any members now who wish to comment on this application, please? I believe Giles Howard. Councillor Howard, you have your hand raised, please.
Oh, here we are, last era. Thanks, Chair. I think paragraph 6.1 of the report comes to the right conclusion that all of the development requires consent, but I'm not sure that the way it was arrived at was right. And in particular, Schedule 2, Part 2, Class B of the GPDO only confers permitted development rights to enable an access to the highway network if, with the exception of Class A, is to enable works in any other class within the schedule. The report then refers to Part 6 Class A, which I'm not sure is correct since Class A applies for agricultural units of 5 hectares or more. The site's 8 acres, which is 3.23 hectares, and therefore it's Class B that would apply. Having said that, and although the development would have to be justified as on the basis of being reasonably necessary for the purposes of agriculture under both classes of Part 6, the site's described as a residential property and not an agricultural unit, so Part 6 is irrelevant in any case. And I think the representations of Community Council and Louise have alluded to that. And I've read through the submission online and I don't have a strong view regarding the retention and amendment of the access, but just some confidence that members are determining this on the correct basis to avoid challenge. And my concern is therefore, Chair, that paragraph 6.1 makes its case on immaterial matters, gives weight to them, and almost infers that the principle of the track wouldn't have been a material consideration if only the prior approval process had been followed. And I might have got the wrong end of the stick on that, but I'd ask Amy or Phil just to confirm one way or the other, please.
Right, thank you. Amy, can you come back in there, please?
Yes, just turn it back on. Yes, thank you for this. Yes, I will have a look at the Part 6. I think the pertinent point that you make, Councillor Howard, is that the application, that the track does need permission, and is why it has been brought before you all today for that determination. So we need to consider the application as laid out in front of us.
Right, thank you, Amy. Any other members now wish to comment? No one else wishes to comment? That's unusual. Right, as there are no others wishing to comment on the application, Councillor Brown, do you wish to come back in there now before we go to the vote?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what we're going to. Sorry, I'm not quite sure what we're going to vote on. I mean, I think the main reason I would be arguing would be in terms of the landscape particular issue, you know, because of this being an engineered drive, and just to read a little bit from the, if I may, it says the site is located within the wider, this is from the landscape assessment by the applicant, I'm quoting from here. The site is located within the wider rural landscape context of Monmouthshire, 1.2 kilometres to the northwest of the village of Galwid. A land map. The landscape character classification for Wales identifies the site as lying within the Chepstow Parkland classification, open hillside and scarp slopes, visual and sensory aspect layer, and evaluates this as high. Within the supporting evaluation text, it is acknowledged that this area comprises a picturesque wooded landscape with long views across and into the valleys, generally unsport by development. I'll go on. I won't quote the whole of that. I'll then go on to another section in this in 4.2 of the landscape assessment by the applicant. The site is also located within the historic landscape aspect, and then it goes on to say cultural landscape aspect of Wentwood, both of which are evaluated as high outstanding. The historic aspect area focused predominantly on the value and good condition of the irregular field system and dispersed settlement, identifying the area to be outstanding as an aspect area with outstanding integrity, survival and potential, important for its prehistoric and early medieval remains, outstanding potential to examine the landscape change. So I think, you know, there is evidence there about the landscape issue, and you know, having I mean, I don't know if you realise how long one of the fields that we considered in the earlier application is about 30 metres. This is about a 420 metre track, which I believe is about 4 metres wide, which is actually wider than the roads adjoining it, on an engineered basis across an area known as with outstanding landscape. So I'd just like to say that I don't know whether which direction the vote is going to go in, but can
I ask Amy to come back in there, Councillor Brown, to see if she can give any more clarity on that, especially on the landscape and the scar on the landscape?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. I don't seem to have a hand to put up, so thank you for calling me in. Yes, the application was considered by our landscape officer, who did look at it and raised no objection in relation to the track or the impact on the landscape. Our landscape officers very well experienced in doing what they do and understand the legislation, and have been part of all the landscape assessments that we've had done as a council. So their recommendation at the end is that the proposed track is not sufficiently harmful to warrant refusal, and that the access as designed now and changed is also an enhancement. If I could just clarify, from the previous application proposed quite a domestic approach with stone walls, tall stone walls and electric gates. This application proposes now a hedgerow with a timber fence and a metal 5-bar gate. The previous access was 23 metres wide, and it now has been reduced to 16 and narrows significantly, whereas the other one was quite a wide bell-shaped access. So overall, the landscape concerns that were raised on the previous application, we felt as officers have been mitigated against.
Right. Thank you, Amy. Councillor Webb, do you wish to come in?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I don't seem to have a hand or the ability to be able to talk. I don't know why, but anyway, thank you very much for letting me in. Yeah, I've listened to Amy, I've listened to the other planning officers, and I would like to move approval, please, Chairman.
Right, thank you, Councillor Webb. Do you have a seconder if we're going to the vote now? Because I think Councillor Brown has exhausted all that she needs to comment on this application. Councillor Webb, therefore, has moved approval. It generally goes to the ward member, but do you have a seconder?
I'll second it, Madam Chair.
As Councillor David Evans has seconded, I will now go to the vote for the recommendation as being for as officers' approval. So could I have a show of hands for approval, please? Could we have it in the chat bar, please, officers?
We've now had 12 responses, Chair. There are 10 for approval, 2 against approval. It looks again like 4 members haven't been able to vote, but if they were, they wouldn't have been able to turn the result either way. So I'm happy that's been approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Webb, do you obviously move for approval so we know which way you were voting, even if you couldn't do it electronically? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would have voted if I could have got in, Chairman.
Right, thank you very much, but it's being carried for approval. So thank you all very much, councillors. We now go on to the 4th application now of the afternoon, or I could say almost evening. This is 00757, and this is at the railway line at Woodside Usk. I believe, Phil, you're presenting this, or is it Andrew?
It's Andrew, it is. I'm just going to get the presentation up.
Right, thank you both.
Right, thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, thank you. And good afternoon, members. And by way of introduction, my name is Andrew Jones, Development Management Area Manager. So this application relates to the construction of phase 2 of a cycleway and footpath from Usk to Little Mill along the route of the disused railway track between Usk and the A472 to the west of Coleg Gwent. The planning application relates to only the eastern section of the total cycle route, and the proposal forms part of the proposed Sustrans Usk to Pontypool National Cycle Route number 466. The application today is presented to you members at the request of the ward member. In addition to this, it's also made by Monmouthshire County Council. And permission is sought for the creation, as I noted earlier, of a footway and cycleway with shared agricultural use by Coleg Gwent Agricultural College and existing land owners. And the route is along the line of the dismantled former railway line. And you'll see on the slides in time now that the route is sort of broadly divided into 7 areas, commencing just off the A472 opposite the Usk Island picnic area car park and terminating just past the BAE Systems entrance. So just moving through the slides quickly, you'll see on screen that's the wider route. And this here then, as I noted, is the sort of 7 areas within this particular section. Just moving on to the next slide. So this just quickly takes you through each area within the wider route. Just go through those, so showing the track there. So it varies at lengths between 2.5 and 3 meters. And then just through the other sections. Thank you, Phil. There we go. And just quickly run through the photographs then for members' benefit. So that's the sort of indication of the site entrance. That's opposite the Esk Island. That's just past where the site, this particular section terminates near the BAE entrance. And here you'll see several sections along the proposed route. So in terms of the key considerations and the principle, firstly, having regard to national planning policy, and in particular PPW 10, this national policy does highlight the importance of planning in promoting and supporting the delivery of the Active Travel Act, and it promotes within PPW 10 creating the right environments and infrastructure to make it easier for people to walk and cycle, including new and improved routes and related facilities. Turning to the LDP, policy MV4 sets out that new cycleways will be permitted where they provide improved opportunities for sustainable travel or recreational cycling, subject to no adverse impact on pedestrian cycling safety and subject to detailed planning considerations. But officers are satisfied in principle that the change of use here to a shared cycle and footpath is acceptable, having regard to both local and national policy. In terms of some of those detailed planning considerations, then, in terms of design landscape impact, officers are satisfied that the track itself, which would vary between 2.5 and 3 meters, 3.5 meters, would have limited visual impact, given the surfacing proposed and the fact that large parts of the route are screened by mature vegetation that flank either side of the former railway line. Members will have seen in correspondence that concerns were raised by the Woodland Trust. However, the council's tree officer has visited the site extensively and is satisfied that the impact on the existing trees along the route would be low. Only a small amount of excavation work is required to facilitate the track, and you will have seen in the report a condition is recommended to ensure that the an appointed project arboriculturalist is in place to oversee all works. In terms of highway safety, you have seen on the drawings that the original boardwalk ramped entrance to the site has been removed from the proposal, and this follows concerns highlighted by the council's highway engineer. Full details of how the route would be connected to the public highway are to be agreed via planning condition as set out in the report. You'll also seen members in correspondence concerns that were received in respect of safety issues associated with the use of the route and potential conflict with the surrounding working farms. As detailed in the officer's report, a condition would be attached and is recommended that would require the detailed design, including technical audits and safety audits, for the construction of this mixed-use track. Originally, it was intended to erect a fence along the middle of the route to separate members of the public from using the route and separate them from stock and associated agricultural machinery. However, it has been sort of concluded that this is not a practical solution, and the details proposed would show installation of a small number of pedestrian cycling refuge points, each one in view of the other. And this would be over a short section of the track, so that pedestrians could have the ability to shelter if necessary. And at this stage, it is anticipated that the design of these refuge points would simply consist of a small post and rail fence construction with stock-proof fencing beneath. With regards to other material considerations, including residential or third-party amenity, the proposal would run between properties known as Little Henrue and Lisvane, which are located towards the conclusion of the route, and the route does run between the rears of these properties. And again, you'll have read in the officer's report that a scheme is to be attached to provide improved screen fencing in this location. But at a wider point, given the position of these properties in proximity to the busy A472, it's not considered that the provision of a cycle track would create such additional noise or harm to residential amenity so as to warrant refusal on that grounds. And it's not considered that users of the path would cause unacceptable harm to privacy of these properties either. And the development then is considered to comply with policies DES 1 and EP1 of the adopted LDP. Finally, in terms of material considerations and biodiversity interests, sufficient survey works have been provided to enable us to make an informed planning decision. and this also includes a wildlife protection and enhancement plan. The site does cross over part of the River Usk Sack via an existing bridge and terminates 100 metres away from this sack. And as such, a habitats regulations assessment has been carried out to determine whether there would be any detrimental impacts on the sack. This is concluded that, subject to appropriate condition, the project would not adversely affect the integrity of the River Usk Sack. In addition, Natural Resources Wales have been consulted on the appropriate assessment, and this was also considered acceptable. The Berthin Brook sink will also be unaffected by the scheme, despite being immediately adjacent to the site, as the scheme does not include any work into this particular area of marshy grassland. Therefore, the scheme is considered to comply with the requirements of policy NE1 of the adopted LDP. In conclusion, then, having regard to all those material considerations, the application is presented to you members today with a recommendation for approval, subject to appropriate planning condition.
Well, thank you, Andrew. Very detailed, all of that, and enhancing people's activities if they want to get out and about. I'm just concerned if it's wide enough in places for agricultural machinery, we wouldn't, is there any way of making sure that no cars or anything larger would go along that track? Councillor Smith is on screen at the moment. I don't believe she wanted to address the committee, but she's quite welcome to if she so wishes.
Yes, I did put in a request, Chairman, to speak. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can indeed.
I'm never quite sure with the technology there. I've arrived. Right. Good afternoon, members. I've walked and I've scrambled along this proposed route. It's obviously through my ward and I know it well. It's an interesting, good proposal. It's got potential, but there are problems. I appreciate the very detailed report that officers have provided. You'll realise that a section of, well, members will realise a section of the route lies along an embankment and there are possibly structural issues with one bridge. The dangerous access across the A472 is recognised, and addressing this issue could benefit Woodside residents plagued by traffic speed. The route runs through a working farm with a herd of 200 cattle, which are moved regularly along and across the route. The track surface needs to be well constructed to stand up to their use and wear, as well as the bikers and whomever else. The issue of the bikes and pedestrians via cattle. Cattle are inquisitive. You know about cattle, Chairman, you know about these things. They can be quizzy, they can be benign, they can be amenable, they can also have character and cause some issues. And I have a concern, the issue of bikes, pedestrians via cattle and farm machinery. There is some big stuff going along there and it is used regularly, that route, so it is important. It is addressed in the report by, I like this, the run of pedestrian cycle refuges, each one in view of the other. Now, it's not a smart motorway, but I reckon this could be the first smart cycleway in Wales if it goes through. So yes, there is an attempt to address the issue, but I have a real concern with the mix of a big herd being moved and some youngsters not understanding and behaving appropriately. What is proposed is actually a recreational route. It's to accommodate family groups, to encourage people to get out and use it. It's not a direct route. A direct route could be contrived to our, well, could be designed very easily to our headquarters and to Coleg Gwent. So I regard this as a recreational use. If there were any incidents with stock or machinery, I'm intrigued to know who is responsible. The application is lodged with, by us, Monmouthshire County Council. Coleg Gwent is involved, or is the tenant farmer held responsible? If there's a mishap with an individual, a bit of machinery, could be negligence, but if it's animal, livestock, and there's an incident with a member of the public, who's responsible, who has to deal with the insurance, who has to deal with the incident? The final leg of the route, leg of the route is across open fields. This does cause me concern because going across an open field next door to the equine centre, to me says, yes, you will have horses in that field. And horses again can be unpredictable. You have the issue, this is the last leg leading up to the 2 residences, the accommodation, the Henroo and Lisvane. The issue of gates being left open of stock getting out, whether it's cattle or whether it's equine horses. There can be a conflict. Horses again have got great character often, and I can imagine them being quite intimidating. So is there a proposal to put a fence across this field for the cycleway, or is it an open route that is going to run across a large field which contains animals? An alternative route, you see, for the access could be through the equestrian centre, land that the college actually owns, so you wouldn't have this conflict. I consider that's possible. And the issue then of if we look at point 65 on your report, Chairman, through the report, the environmental issues have been well and truly dealt with. That's good. They've been addressed properly and rightly, the trees, the arboriculturalists, everything. I'm concerned now about the people, and I'm concerned that in the report, it makes reference to the route being behind the properties. Yes, it is, as it leads up to them, and then it leads through between them. And in my mind, I've got a picture of one part of that little lane being less than 15 foot from somebody's kitchen window. It is an incursion into people's. I think an alternative route should be looked at. The original applicant for this, or proposer of this scheme, has always been well aware of my concerns. These are 2 families whose lives are going to be disrupted. There's reference to noise from the A472. Quite a few years ago, those residents, or the previous resident and the existing one, paid for the tree screen that is there. The A472 is considerably distant to a path running right outside your kitchen window. So I really would like the human interest to be taken as seriously as the environmental issue. There can be an alternative. So I do ask Office to look. It says, doesn't it, the rear of these properties would create such additional noise or harm to residential amenity. It will affect residential amenity, taking this new traffic through there. And you yourself raised an issue of big machinery, that's farm machinery. There's another issue that occurs on the paths around here where I live, which is motorbikers. And there'll be nothing like a noise of a motorbike ripping up between your 2 houses. And with the scheme as it is, there is no way you can exclude that traffic. So I thank you very much for your time, members and Chairman. Safety of the public is paramount. Will it be accessible to motorbikes, this route? The impact on the farming enterprise. It's important that those boys do not suffer detriment from this scheme, which I think is a good proposal. It's got to be done properly. And who is responsible for resolving any incidents, anything that occurs along the route? We as a council are making this application, but there are a multitude of people really, from the original proposer to the college to Monmouthshire County Council. And the other thing, so who's responsible for resolving any incidents, picking up any tabs, any bills, and the maintenance, and to also how to ensure that users of the route, if it comes to fruition, do not stray from that route, because there are copious gates along the route that would be very inviting to hop into and have your picnic. So it's a proposal I find really interesting. I hope it is successful, but I hope it is not going to be to the detriment of anybody, and a particular concern about people living in their homes in peace and quiet. So thank you very much, members. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much indeed for that insight into that application, Councillor Smith. Greatly appreciated with your obviously local knowledge. And yes, when you say about the stock, it is a dairy farm, and so the stock moves morning and night. So it is a worry when it is stock, and you do have to make sure that you've got third-party insurance if you're the landowner. But this is a bit of a multitude of people involved, and you'd have to have good signage up there, and also receptacles somewhere for people, because they do leave litter, and that could be very harmful in the countryside. Anyway, I'm sure Councillor Smith will stay on board as we ask the committee to comment. Councillor Clark first, please. Councillor Clark?
Yeah, I'm trying my best.
Yes, I can see you now, Councillor. You're muted though, Councillor. I'm sure Councillor Clark will be back on board in a moment. Councillor Clark? If we're waiting for Councillor Clark, he's obviously got the adjoining ward. I'll take Councillor Howard next, please.
Oh, thanks, Claire. I hope I'm not going to contradict what Peter has to say. I speak as a member who's got a cycle route in his ward along the former railway track, and that being the part between Llanfoist and Brimar. Oh, do you want Peter to come back in? He's come back online.
Well, he's back on now. Thank you. Please hold your horses a moment then, please, Giles, and we'll have Peter. Yeah. Thank you, Peter.
Sorry about that. The machine's got a mind of its own this afternoon. Yeah, Val put every point very clearly, and I thank her for that most sincerely. One thing is that the farmers who farm along there are very concerned about this, obviously to how they're going to cope with this cycleway in action. Could we please discuss with that family all these proposals as we go along, so they at least feel involved rather than impose our will over them? I think it's one of those items that it's so unusual, but I think we need to take the tenant farmer along with us during these proposals. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. I should have thought that all of this should have been taken on board before it became an issue on the planning committee. I think perhaps we need a little bit more dialogue with all those concerned. Anyway, Councillor Giles Howard next, please.
Yeah, thank you again, Chair. Yes, well, I was just recounting the fact that the Clydach Gorge cycle route that passes through or starts in my ward now at Llanfoist, and in my previous ward, Llanethley Hill, went right through it all the way up to Brimar. And I have to say, I remember attending the planning start meeting of the National Park some years back when it was coming forward as a planning application, and I think I was quite cynical about it and raised, as others did, the same sort of concerns that I see and read about now. I think in general the track has been a great asset, and it has been used responsibly, with I think few of the highlighted concerns actually being realised, the ones about the littering, the motorbike access and the conflict with stock, and they can be managed. And you know, I've cycled up the Clydach Gorge route many times between Llanfoist and Brimar, and also the route from Monmouth to Simmons Yat. Absolutely great leisure facility, and I've seen no reason why this one, if properly managed and the concerns that local members are taking into account, shouldn't be exactly the same. And I look forward to blowing up the tyres on my bike and coming and riding on this one as well, Chair.
Well, don't forget the Lycra, Councillor Howard. I believe Andrew Jones, Planning Officer, wishes to comment.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the members that have spoken there. It's useful as well to get Councillor Howard's first-hand perspective then on these sort of this sort of infrastructure. Just returning back to Councillor Smith's points. So firstly, in terms of the discussion on liability and insurance, that really is a matter outside of the planning process. I think any concerns going forward would have to be sort of directed to the project manager, and obviously the applicant in this instance is Mike Moran within the council, so would suggest those sort of things are directed there. But in terms of the determination of this, it's not really a material planning consideration. Similarly with litter concerns and any misuse or antisocial behaviour. I fully agree with the points though in terms of communication and engagement with
the local farmers, local residents. And in both instances, there's a couple of conditions there that would be pertinent for us to fully engage and consult with the local residents and farmers in terms of the refuge points, the safety audits, etc., as well as the screening proposals next to the two identified neighbours. And Councillor Councillor Smith, sorry, is correct. That isn't just the rear, that does run much the length of those properties. So they could be fully consulted on those details. And I'm sure that a reasonable solution there is achievable through that condition. So I certainly fully take on board the well-made points from Councillor Smith, but I think all of those matters can be addressed through the conditions set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Anybody else wish to comment? Oh, it's gone dark. Anybody else wishing to comment? The lights have all gone out here. I don't know what the problem is. Perhaps they think we should be in the building at this time of night.
Get them move around.
Anybody else wish to comment? No, nobody else wishes to comment. Councillor Smith obviously isn't a member of the planning committee, but you all gauged what she has to say of it. So anybody wish to move the application?
I'll move, Chair. It's Giles.
Right, thank you.
Not
Councillor.
in Lycra. I'm happy to second that, Chair. Matt Feekins.
Thank you, Councillor Feekins. You've seconded Councillor Howard's move. So we'll go now to the vote. So please go to the chat bar and it's moved for approval.
No chat bar again, Madam Chair.
Right, I will take your vote verbally.
Thank you.
Right, thank you, Councillor Webb. If there's anyone else who has...
Chairman, I've got no chat bar.
Right, how do you wish to vote, Councillor Clark and Councillor
in favour. In favour.
Right, thank you. Councillor Webb?
For the application, thank you.
Right, thank you. Denzel, those are two extra to vote then, please.
Yeah, so that's 14 for approval. It looks like 2 councillors haven't been able to vote, but that's still quite clearly for approval in any event. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you very much indeed for that vote, Denzel. We now go on, and it is very dark now. We go on to the 5th application of the afternoon, 02012. And this is at Landfoist. This is yours again, Amy, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. I'm sure Phil will pop up with the presentation in just shortly. However, this is application DCDM 2020-02012, the proposed development of 24 extra care units, class C2 use, including access, car park, landscaping, boundary treatments and means of enclosure. So the application was presented to this committee on the 6th of October 2020 with a recommendation for refusal. Members did not accept this recommendation and deferred the application to be approved with conditions. The application was then again presented to committee in November with the suggested conditions, which were approved by the committee. Following discussions with the application is returned to you again for approval following the modification of condition 13 only. So as members are fully aware of the application, I'll just refer to condition 13. So condition 13 secures the use of the units within class C2 and that the extra care accommodation hereby approved shall be occupied by persons aged 55 years or older and shall be solely for extra care accommodation in association with and part of the existing care home, currently known as the Fox Centre. This is to ensure that the units are retained for their intended purposes. However, the applicant has requested that the condition be modified to remove the restriction that the extra care units are used solely in association with the Fox Centre's care home. So to clarify, the amended condition as set out in the officer's report states that the units hereby approved shall be used solely for extra care homes within class C2. that the extra care accommodation hereby approved shall be occupied by persons aged 55 years or older and shall be used solely for extra care accommodation. And the clarification for extra care remains in the decision as an informative. So in conclusion, following the presentation of the application in October and November's committee, the application is now presented with a recommendation for approval subject to the modified condition 13 only as set out in the officer's report. Thank you.
Right. Thank you for that explanation, Amy. I believe Councillor Howard, this is in your ward. Do you wish to comment?
Madam Chair, thank you.
Are you up for approval?
Yes,
approval.
move recommendation.
Could I have a seconder, please?
Yes, Councillor Clark.
Right, thank you, Councillor Clark. So could I have a show of hands for approval in the chat bar, please? With the amendments that Amy has stated. Is anybody in the position where they can't vote again? It looks as though you've all been able to vote.
Yeah, we've had 14 responses, all for approval. So again, 2 councillors haven't been able to vote, but it's still a very clear indication of approval.
Thank you very much, Denzel. So that has been approved. We now go on to application. This is application 00968, and this is at Devorden. Thank you, Phil.
Oh, no, this one's myself. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, Andrew.
No problem at all. Thank you. Yep, so this is a
face is popping up on the screen. That's what it is. Thank you, Andrew.
No problem. So this is a full application for a 4-bay agricultural building to use the storage of hay, machinery and other implements. And the application, members, is presented to you today at the request of the ward member to allow for consideration of the reason justification for the proposal and an assessment with regards to the impact of the development on the character and appearance of the area. So the application itself is part of a wider 101 hectare agricultural holding located within the Devorden area. It's worth to note that the holding is split between 2 main parcels of land referred to as Lower House Farm, Wolves Newton, and this is where the main applicant's main yard is situated, and the land holding to which this application relates, which is Timauer. So just to walk through the slides with you, this shows the position of the building there. You can see the red edge, and it's sited to the north of Devorden and south of Trellick.
Is that the one in the middle of the field sort of thing, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm not sure if Phil can put his cursor over it. It should the application site should be edged in that there.
Right, thank you.
And on the next slide then, that should show an aerial photograph. Yeah. There we go. And you see the purple right of way. So this then, actually I'm not sure those actually align. This red line boundary that's submitted with the application is the correct position. That's much closer to the field edge. Just continue through the slides. So that's shown then at a smaller scale, showing the position then of the proposed building next to an existing stone storage yard area. And that shows in green there, you can see, members, an area of indicative proposed native planting. This is the building elevation, so it would be 18.3 meters wide, 10.7 deep, at a maximum height of 5.3 meters. That's falling down then to 4.3 of the eaves. It would be finished in a dark green color coated box corrugated finish, say with the open front, and grey fibre cement to the roof with the Perspex roof lights. And that's just the floor plan there, just confirming the dimensions. And that's the site then are showing the wider land holding, which is also just quickly run through the site videos just to give a little bit more context to those plans. So this shows the existing area of hard standing next to where the proposed building would be sited. The next one then is a view to the southeast, looking from that hard standing area. And then finally, there's a view sort of taking a step back there, looking towards Timar and Oak Farm. So in terms of the key considerations and issues, in terms of the principle, policy S13 seeks to protect, maintain and enhance the character of the county's landscape. And within policy LC1, there's a presumption against new development in the open countryside, unless it's justified under national planning policy and or subject to specific LDP policies. And in this instance, policies RE4 and S10 are applicable and relevant. Policy RE4 sets out clearly that new agricultural buildings will be permitted where the buildings, or when in some instances access, is reasonably required for agricultural purposes and adequate provision is made for the disposal of foul and surface water and any animal waste. The case officer in this instance has sought further information in respect of the agricultural enterprise in terms of this justification. The applicant farms a holding of approximately 110 hectares, of which 30 hectares adjoin the current application site. The flock register number submitted confirms that the applicant currently has a flock of 945 animals. And although the main yard is at Lower House Farm, contains a number of buildings used for lambing and storage, the land to which this application relates does not benefit from any buildings. And although the application may have previously removed hay and silage from the site for storage at Lower House, given the scale of the holding and the number of animals farmed, officers are satisfied that it's reasonable and justifiable to provide a building for the storage of implements, machinery and fodder in the interests of efficient operation of the holding and also to reduce transportation within the holding. And therefore the proposal in principle is considered reasonably required for agriculture and therefore complies with policy RE4. In terms of the wider landscape impacts and the considerations there, the building itself, as you have seen from the plans, is of standard modern agricultural specification, and such a structure in this context in principle is not considered to be alien or uncommon. The proposal would be positioned in the northernmost part of the holding, adjacent to an existing hard stand that you saw in the photographs, and to the east of TMR Farmhouse and the barns and new agricultural enterprise known as Oak Tree Farm. You'll have seen also that mature hedges are positioned to the west and north of the development. And whilst the siting of the building could be considered somewhat disjointed relative to the applicant's main yard, the development would be associated with a large and actively farmed land. Given the position and proximity of the building relative to the western and northern hedges, the existing built form of Timar Farm and Oak Tree Farm, the existing hard stand and access road to the application site, when considered in association with the proposed hedgerow planting, it's considered that this development would satisfactorily assimilate into the rural landscape and is therefore considered to meet relevant policies that seek to safeguard Monmouthshire's countryside from inappropriate development. In terms of third-party neighbour amenity, the proposal will be sited approximately 90 metres from the nearest residential dwelling and would not house livestock, and given the existing agricultural use of the surrounding land, officers are satisfied that there would be no harm or conflict with policies DES 1 or EP1. In terms then of biodiversity interests and green infrastructure, as per most recent Welsh Government guidance, ecological mitigation enhancement is provided. Often this will take the form of bat and bird boxes on or within the development. However, given the materials proposed here, it's considered that the most appropriate form of mitigation would be through new native planting, and that was shown on the earlier drawing etched in green. And this infrastructure will also assist in screening the proposal whilst providing enhanced roosting and foraging opportunities for local wildlife. Public footpath also runs in proximity to the site, however, would not be obstructed, so there will be no impact on that green infrastructure asset. So in conclusion, the application is presented to members with a recommendation for approval, subject to the conditions set out, and also draw particular attention to condition 3, which seeks to connect this building with the land, specifically at the TMR element of the holding. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Councillor Greenland, I expect it's his ward, but obviously he isn't online to comment on this. I believe then the next door applicant or county councillor would be Councillor Webb, if you wish to comment on this application. And I think members are well aware of the actual place when we went down that very narrow concrete drive towards the new enterprise dwelling, well, not dwelling, enterprise with a calf rearing unit. Councillor Webb, do you wish to comment?
Yes, thank you. Just very briefly, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I was concerned about the impact on the countryside and on the rural scene, but I think, bearing in mind what's been said, I am not so concerned. I don't know if there's any possibility of the roof. What is the colour of the roof, please, Craig or Andrew? Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor. I was just confirming on that. I believe it was a grey fibre cement sheeting with the sort of openings in it.
So, is there any possibility of it being a green roof? I don't know if this is just you know something that could be considered, perhaps.
Well, it's.
I don't know how members feel about it.
I mean, that officer's view is that the landscape impact on the building as it stands is acceptable, but if members were minded, I mean, a condition could be added to agree all colours.
Yeah. Thank you. That's the only comment I would have, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Yeah. I think I could agree with that, Councillor Webb, because when you look more or less towards the south of that site, it's very, very open because it's on a rise, isn't it, up to that driveway. And so I dare say it could be seen from quite a distance. Yeah. So anyway, I'll see what other members wish to comment on it. If they could.
Otherwise, I have no problem with it. I would recommend approval. Thank you. With the officer's recommendations. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Webb. Anybody else wish to comment? No members wishing to comment?
I'll second it if Anne's moved it.
Alan Davis, I see, has raised his hand, so obviously I'll take that in mind, Councillor Clark. Councillor Alan Davis, please.
I was going to move approval or second approval, Madam Chair, with that condition that Councillor Webb proposed.
Right, thank you. Thank you very much. So it's been moved for approval. I think we might, as nobody's got any other comments to make about the application, I will go to the vote. Could I have it in the chat bar, please, officers? Right then, so you're going to give the result of the vote, please?
Yes, we've had 11 votes in all for approval. Again, 5 councillors haven't been able to vote, but again, it's still a very clear motion for approval.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. So that has been approved. We now go to the next application. This is application 01328, and this is in Caldecott.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Yes, this is application.
I'm just going to leave the screen for a moment to shut the window. It's a lot of cold air coming in, but you carry on with the presentation. It'll only take me 2 minutes.
No problem, thank you. Yes, application DM 2020-01328 is for the construction of 2 semi-detached 2-bedroom houses in the garden number 73 Park Road, Caldecott. The application is presented to Planning Committee on the request of a local member. 73 Park Road is located northwest of Caldecott in the main residential area just south of the M48. The site is within the development boundary. 73 Park Road fronts Beach Road, forming a pair of semi-detached houses between Park Road and Elm Road. This can be seen on the site and aerial photograph on the slide. The property is surrounded by other very similar residential properties and their gardens. The application is for an outline planning application with all matters reserved. The existing site plan on the next slide shows the garden to number 73, with a large garden to the side, front and rear of the property. To the right of the site plan is the garage of the properties fronting onto Elm Road. The proposed site plan shows the proposed 2 dwellings within the garden plot fronting onto the road in line with the existing properties of number 73 and 75 Park Road. The proposed units are referred to 73A and 73B on the site plan. Both buildings have a footprint of 43.4 square metres with maximum heights to eaves of 4.6 and ridge of 7.3. Again, both buildings have a width of 4.4 metres and a length of 9.8. The site plan proposes 2 parking spaces in front of each unit, with 2 additional spaces created for the existing property number 73. In relation to highways, the authority's officer raises no objection, stating that provision of off-street parking is in line with the council's adopted standards. There are no identified implications with flooding, and the application will require SAB approval. One neighbour objection has been received in relation to loss of view. The local member has provided a representation in support of the proposals, which is summarised in the report and fully available on the website. This relates to the difficulties that could be encountered if the proposed units were attached to the existing to create a terrace. In addition, it's noted that the plans show the units would be DDA compliant starter homes with ample gardens and would have sufficient on-street parking. Any concerns over overlooking or overbearing development of the properties of Elm Road would be mitigated by the large gardens in the garage, and it was requested that flexibility and consideration for the context is applied in the determination of this application. So the application is within the development boundary and the principle of development is presumed acceptable, subject to the usual material considerations. As discussed, the application is in outline with all matters reserved. The key issues relate to the proximity of the proposed units to the neighbouring properties and the impact that this will have on their amenity. So the authority's supplementary planning guidance on infill development states that intervening distances between the rear of one property and the side of another should be 15 metres. As you can see from the slides, on the next slide, the distance between the side elevation of the proposed unit and the rear of Elm Road is approximately 10.5. The applicant's plan was incorrect, as shown in the purple circle there, but this has been confirmed by accurate measurements on site and confirmed with the agent again. So with 1 metre gap between the existing neighbour's garage and the proposed new building, there would be approximately 11.5 metres, with on-site variations at its maximum 11.8 metres between the side of the proposed 73B and the rear of number 1 and 2 Elm Road. This is considered to be insufficient and would cause an overbearing and impact on number 1 and 2 Elm Road, with a tall brick wall opposite the rear of the neighbour's habitable rooms, in particular bedrooms on the 3rd floor. The applicant has suggested that this could be increased by additional 1 metre, reducing the width of the 2 units. However, this was considered to create 2 tall, thin buildings, which would be out of character with the form and the surrounding properties. The next slide shows the garden of the property with the rear of 1 and 2 Elm Road and the neighbouring garage accessed off Park Road. The next slide shows a closer view of the rear of 1 and 2 Elm Road and the garage, showing the variation in the boundary treatments. The next slide then shows the main garden of number 73 Park Road. And note the brick lean-to on the side of the existing building, which proposed to be removed in order to accommodate the 2 new units. And the last photograph here shows the front elevations of 73 and 75 Park Road. So in summary, with the next slide, it is considered that the principle of development is acceptable within the development boundary, and that the site could accommodate a single unit, or that 2 units could be attached to the existing semi to create a terrace. However, at present, officers consider that the intervening distances to be far from adopted guidance and therefore creates an unacceptable overbearing impact on the neighbour's property, and the application should be refused as set out with the reasons in the officer's report. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Amy. I'm not quite sure. Is this Councillor David Evans's ward?
Well, it's mine, Chair. Mine, Chair.
Oh, Councillor Eason, do you
Yes.
wish to speak then on the application, please, first, before the rest of the committee?
Yes, please, Chair.
Yes, carry on.
You see me? Yes, I'll declare a personal interest in this matter, not a prejudicial interest, because I'm known to the applicant and as I am to most of my ward members. I will take you through what I consider to be the situation. I don't disagree with the officer's position, but this outline application is to build a pair of small semi-detached affordable 2-bedroom properties on a large side garden in a quiet part of Caldegon. This infill development will be able to use the land efficiently and enable easy access to existing amenities by walking, cycling, etc., thus reducing the need to use private cars. The properties will be DDA compliant. I've read the SPG planning guidance properly, and as I say, this is an infill site between existing residential properties and has an ample street frontage. The site is not a backland site which will be located behind existing buildings. It was not feasible to extend the main property into a terrace because by having a physical interconnection, it would have meant the access problems and the creation for the current and planned property through an alleyway with its associated legal rights of ownership of the space created, hence the demolition of an outhouse and the plan to form a shared pathway on that particular side. Having read the supplementary planning guidance regarding small-scale infill developments with fewer than 10 dwellings defined under policies H1, 2 and 3 of the Monmouthshire LDP, which require development proposals to have regard to privacy, amenity and health and well-being of the occupants and neighbouring properties, and be of a good design which is sustainable, and I believe that this plan will provide just that. The existing landscape features and views across the site support this and are in keeping with the area. The land is large enough to accommodate additional houses and also sufficient on-site planning, and the garden space is similar to the existing houses in the area. These new dwellings, if planned and built, will benefit from private garden spaces for drying clothes, accommodating pets, children's play, quiet enjoyment and so on. This small residential development will ensure that the garden space reflects the size and function of the proposed dwellings and prevailing character of the area, i.e. the proposed development will be in keeping with the building line of adjacent properties. The predominant materials of the proposal would reflect the materials of the original dwelling and the neighbouring dwellings. Roofing as well as the walls will match the adjacent dwellings and will complement the street scene. The aspect of the new houses will not affect the privacy of neighbours, as there are no windows planned for either end of the gables or either gable end which would overlook the nearest properties. The supplementary planning guidance suggests that it is desirable to have a 15-metre space, not has to have, it's desirable or should have a 50-metre space between principal elevations, together with the main habitable windows on the front and rear with side gable walls without windows. In this case, being the property near Elm Road, there will be a 13-metre space. I believe that is the latest discussion that the applicant has had with the authority before this report was written, a 13-metre space. There is a mitigating factor in that a large detached garage in the property of number 1 Elm Road will shield any potential intrusive aspects. As stated, there are no windows planned for that end of the property, which will ensure the adequate amenities provided for future occupiers as well as existing residents. And I must say there are many examples across Caldegon of relaxation of the desired 50-metre space to prevent overlooking. Some as close as 5 metres and others upstairs living rooms or flats directly overbearing private gardens. For example, between 28 and 30 Longcroft Road, the space is less than 5 metres. Also, from the first floor living rooms of Gwyn Court, which is the MHA property, the living rooms are overlooking directly into garden opposite. There's also the recent development of the White Hart, adjacent to the town centre, where 15 apartments are crushed into one small plot, just twice the size of this particular plot with 2 developments. There will be at least 21 metres between the facing elevations across the street. There will be no objection to the Section 106 payment, but not 40,000. I would say 4,000. There's an error of £36,000 there. I believe the plan addresses all the supplementary planning guidance notes, and with shielding by a large garage in the adjacent garden will mitigate the desire to have 15 metres to prevent overlooking. I support the application. I'd like members to consider the mitigation of these particular 13 metres and allow this application to go for full planning application and be brought back in its proper state then. So I'm asking members to support this with the mitigation that the 15 metres that they would like to have is about 13 metres, and in keeping with other properties in the area, well reflects the space that is required. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Easton. I have several hands up. Obviously, Amy's come back in if she wants to clarify something. So I'll take Amy first, then Councillor Clark, then Councillor Howard. Amy?
Thank you for that. I'll just quickly confirm that these aren't proposed as affordable units.
Oh, yeah.
Are market units, which may be more affordable in the area as opposed to a larger 4-bedroomed house, for example, but they're not affordable houses through a housing association or anything like that.
Correct.
Thank you for that clarity, Amy. Thank you. Councillor Clark. Councillor Easton, have you switched your camera off, please?
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Clark.
Looking at the drawings here, they're totally two impractical properties. There isn't enough room to the side of each house, especially the one on the right, to get a wheelie bin down there. There's only 2 feet between the outside wall and the fence, and you have to take into account the width of the fence. With the new wheelie bins, you wouldn't be able to get a wheelie bin down there, so it's just too greedy. One decent property on there would be absolutely sufficient, and I couldn't possibly support 2 tight dwellings like this.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Howard?
Come on, bloody thing.
I have the same problem.
Oh, there we are. I see the mic's gone off on now. Yeah, I agree with Peter. We asked for the SPG and we approved it after considering the contents, and it's all about ensuring quality development. And I think the gap between elevations is the main thing. It's insufficient to respect the outlook from the rear properties 1 and 2. I think Peter's right. 1 dwelling would have been acceptable. The other thing I don't like about this is the space at the front. That in order to accommodate the 6 off-street parking spaces for the 2 new houses and the existing one, you'd have a frontage that would be dominated by parked cars. You know, not that it's material. I'm always mindful of the fact that the applicant's got a right of appeal. That the poor people in numbers 1 and 2, looking at the side of a massive gable end, don't have a right of appeal. So, you know, if we don't approve the outline consent, the applicant can go that way. But I just think it's a little bit too much, and that the lack of suitable housing, whether affordable or not, shouldn't be provided at the expense of the amenity of others. So I'd go with a refusal, Chair.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Giles Howard. Councillor Alan Davis, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I would agree with the comments of the 2 previous speakers. This is overdevelopment of the site is far too near the other properties. The applicant has an opportunity to put another application in for something which is much more suitable to the area, and I would move refusal of the application, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. I believe if nobody else has raised their hands for comments.
Madam Chair, I can't get in on the.
Right. All right, Councillor David Evans, you may comment now, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got to disagree with what's been said there, because if you go around Caldecott and you're saying about being greedy, you should have looked and corrected yourself years ago, because there's enough room on that property to put 2 detached buildings. One of them apparently is going to be used for disability, and I know that shouldn't be a waiver to pass a planning application, but I feel that if this is only outline planning permission, is for us to let the application outline plan permission go through, and then the proper application could be submitted, and then let's have a look at it. There's no overlooking. There's plenty of space there, and I disagree with what Giles said. The car parking space on front of the properties would be like an over for parking. So I feel that I got to go with Tony Easton and for the application outline plan application.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. I believe Councillor Higginson wishes to speak next, please.
Can you hear me? Can you
Yes,
hear me
I can.
now?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, I agree with my colleagues in this respect, and I go along with what their views are. Thank you, Chairman.
Which colleagues do you mean, as several have spoken?
Oh, sorry, Councillor Easton and Councillor Evans.
Right, thank you very much for that, Councillor Higginson. Councillor Harris, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I've got it right and my mathematics is right, each of these units would be just over 15 feet wide. You know, to my mind, affordable housing is absolutely necessary, but not at any cost. This is just cramming much too much on that particular plot. I go for a single house on there of some description, but I certainly couldn't support these two houses on that plot. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Anyone else wish to speak? Right, we'll go to the vote. The first vote is being moved by Councillor Easton.
Can I come back in, Chair?
Yes, you can, Councillor Easton, if it's quickly.
Yes, just briefly. The only issue that the officer had was this amount of distance between One Elm Road and the properties. None of the other matters were of concern to the planning officers, and I was asking for mitigation in terms of the distance between the property and number 1 Elm Road. I illustrated the argument. I understand what you're saying about the sizes of these properties may not be that's what you would like, maybe not what I would like, but I was making the point that this county council has agreed far denser properties on spaces twice the size of this. For example, the White Hart in Caldecott has got 16 properties on it, in comparison to this, which has got 2 properties, yet it's 8 times smaller. So if you're going to agree to cram properties in like you have at the White Hart, you should apply the same principle across the rest of the county. Equally, Longcroft Road, there are two semi-detached properties there, barely 4 metres between one and a conservative another. And equally, I mentioned Graney Court, an upstairs flat, living room is directly overlooking gardens. So we've got to understand what mitigation is. This one, I don't think compares anywhere near those. And I would look to say the officer's concerns are the factor of 13 metres between there and One Elm Road. None of the other factors about size and wheelie bins are brought into question. That is the only concern, and that's the only concern that I'm asking for mitigation on. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Easton. We have to deal with what application is in front of us now, and it's been obviously debated. I still have Councillor Alan Davis to speak, please.
My camera's not working.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I think the only proposal put forward so far is mine to refuse the application, which needs a seconder. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, I'll take the votes now on both aspects of it. Councillor Easton has obviously moved approval, and as he is the ward member, I will take that first. And you have a seconder, I believe, in Councillor David Evans. So could I have a vote? And obviously we have a move to approve, and that is by Councillor Alan Davis. Councillor Alan Davis, do you have a seconder for approval? For a refusal, sorry.
Yes, I'll second.
I'll second that.
Right, thank you, Councillor Clark. So the first vote we'll take now, as I have stated, and we'll hopefully get the hands up in the chat bar.
Which, Madam Chair, what we voting for?
Well, as it comes up in the chat bar, you can vote for approval or against approval.
I can't get the chat bar now.
Yeah, not working.
Has anybody else got issues with the chat bar?
Yeah, I don't have it either, Chairman.
Well, Chair, the officer's recommendation was refused. Just go for the vote on that, one way or another. Either refuse it or don't refuse it.
Yes, but we need to have a proper vote, and obviously,
well, I know that. Oh.
The 3 members that are speaking at the moment are up for approval. So we will count your votes then verbally as approval, correct?
Thank you.
Right, all other members, please put your vote in the chat bar.
Yeah.
That clear with you, Denzel?
Madam Chair.
Chairman, can I come in, please, Maureen? I think it does make it very clear. What are we approving?
I think this is that's the point, isn't it? That the officer's recommendation is
approving the refusal. We want to know what we're approving. Can you make that clear?
If you're approving the application. Right. Is that for refusal, or are you against approval?
Madam Chair, can I just make a suggestion?
Yes, certainly.
Can we ask officers to put a new chat bar in the box?
It would be helpful, I think, Craig.
One for outlining, because the first vote is to vote on refusal, isn't it? In accordance with the officer's recommendation. So vote to refuse, and then against refusal. And then abstain.
What do you mean refused? You either support the officer or you don't support the officer. Simple as that.
Yes, refuse the application in accordance with the officer's recommendation.
That's complicated. You either support the officer or don't support the officer. So the question should be: do we support the officer? The officers.
Yes, I think that's what Craig's trying to say. So we should start a new voting panel should be put in. Into the chat bar here, and if you're in favour of the officer recommendation, you would vote for approval in that new chat bar.
So if we're against the officer, we vote against.
Yes, and if you're against the officer, you vote against. Yeah.
Okay, it's fine with me. So
there's a new chat bar now, Madam Chair, as Denzel just described. I think it's just clearer for officers that you're voting on whether you agree with the officer's recommendation to refuse the application or you're against refusal. Obviously to approve.
Which is not very different to what I said with the approval one.
No, it just clarifies it.
Yeah, that's quite all right. So if you're against the officer's recommendation, you're really approving it. Or at the top one of the chat bar is for refusal as officers recommend.
Madam Chair, I still can't get into a chat bar.
No, that's not me, Madam Chair, but either.
We'll take your vote verbally then, councillors.
Well, you better take mine verbally as well.
We've had 11 responses, or one is an abstention, 10 are for refusal as per the officer recommendation. So if there are 5 councillors who haven't voted who would like to vote.
Yeah, I
can't vote either.
I can't vote. I haven't seen it.
Councillor Evans, Councillor Higginson and Councillor Eason, they all voting for approval of the application, which is against the officer's recommendation.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so we have 10 for refusal as per the officer recommendation. We have 3 against refusal, and we have 1 abstention. So that motion has been refused.
Oh,
I'll come round, Ruth.
I'm in darkness again.
Well, the motion has been approved, but the application has been refused.
Right. Thank you very much, Denzel.
What's wrong with your robot?
I don't know. The lights keep going off in here. There must be a timer switch on it or something. Thank you, Councillor Clark has come to my aid. Right, so we have now decided on that application is for refusal. We now go to application, and I believe this is the last application of the evening. This is 01517, and it's stated as Swan Meadow, Monmouth Road, Abergavenny.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So this is an application to modify a Section 106 planning obligation, and it's presented to committee as the original heads of terms of the 106 were agreed by members of this committee. As noted there, the site relates to the McCarthy and Stone development, which is actually known as Riverside Court in the town of Abergavenny. The original planning permission was referenced DC 2013-00304, and this was approved in June 2014 for 38 retirement apartments. You can see the scheme there on your screen. It's to the rear of the bus station and the car park in Abergavenny, and that's the completed development there when viewed from the car park. Principle, there's only one material consideration in this case, is the amendment of the planning application for an equity share of one of the apartments to be changed to a financial contribution made for affordable housing in the local area. The original approval, which was subject to the Section 106 agreement, required that 2 of the units were golden share apartments where either an elderly person or persons nominated by the council as being unable to meet their housing need on the open market is offered the property. And whilst one of the units has sold, Monmouthshire County Council's housing department has been unsuccessful in attempts to sell the second property to appropriate designated person. And therefore, in light of that, it's proposed to amend the Section 106 agreement to provide a financial contribution that would be used for the provision of affordable housing in the local area. And with regards to the sum to be paid, the current market value is £229,950, making the 30% share worth £68,985. And it's this figure, the latter figure there, £68,985, that would be paid via the updated 106 towards local affordable housing. And therefore, this is presented with members for the recommendation for approval, and the original 106 would be amended via deed of variation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that explanation, Andrew. I'm sure all members are well aware of this development in Abergavenny. I'm not sure whose ward this is in. I believe it might be Councillor Powell. If you wish to comment first of all, please.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, Councillor Powell.
You can't see
me. I can't see you.
Oh, never mind. Perhaps you can. I
can see now. Fine.
Now. Oh, it's gone the opposite way. Yes. Thank you very much. It's not actually my ward. It's Councillor Tudor Thomas's ward, because it's just in Priory. It goes right up against my ward. My ward ends at Holywell Road. Right. But I'm well familiar with it, and it's a shame that they haven't managed to find a suitable person to buy it at that lower price. As long as the money goes somewhere or other for somebody to have affordable housing to live in, I don't mind where it goes. Just let's have somebody having a house.
Thank you. I understand that completely. Thank you, Councillor Powell. I believe Councillor Giles Howard wished to comment, and then Councillor Clark. Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Chair. This is only a quick one, and I'm querying the value of the apartment at 229,000. And the reason I do that is I've got open on another screen details for the Persimmon development in Abergavenny up in Llantilio Patholi, and there's a 3-bedroom semi-detached house there for 204,000, and a 3-bedroom detached for 244, and that's not, one's less than the suggested value of this, and the other's not that much greater. And I just wonder who's come to that view that that's the value of the property. The other thing I bear in mind as well is I suppose it could be considered as a personal non-pecuniary interest. It's just that I'm aware of somebody who I've known for a long time who's been looking for accommodation of this kind, but has to sell their own property, and I believe is currently on the market, or certainly has been. So I'm not entirely sure that there isn't a demand for this, but it may just be that demand is being held up by movement or lack of movement in the housing sector. But certainly it's the value given the price of those new ones that I'm a little bit puzzled by, and I'd like to know who's valued it at that, and actually how many bedrooms are it, 1 or 2? Thank you, Chair.
And not to that, Councillor Howard, how is it marketed for, you know, perhaps somebody of any interest to it.
Yeah, good point. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Councillor Clark?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm on the same point, actually. If you want to go and buy a McCarthy and Stone flat in Abergavenny, it's going to cost you a damn sight more than that. So I think we've been done here slightly. I think we should have a new look at the value they're giving us.
Does it take into consideration of sort of services, maintenance, all that type of thing?
Well, that's common to all properties, isn't it?
Yeah, but that would be, you know, taken into, you know, the value of that actual property.
Well, you know, I for one would be interested to see how that has been calculated.
Yes.
Some of us live in the real world and not everybody does.
Well, sometimes perhaps we need more than one person to go and value that sort of thing. I'm not aware of how they've come to this decision of what we would be gaining out of it.
No.
Madam Chair,
with a higher figure.
Councillor Powell?
Yeah, can I come back? And what I was going to say, I don't know what the value of them are, but I do know there's quite a lot of stipulations. If you buy one, there's two ways. You can either buy whole one or half one at the new lot, half one and half rent. But if you buy a house there and you want to get rid of it, you can't just sell it to anybody you want to. They have the say as who it's sold to. So it's quite tight. And I know that the amenities you pay for, the charge in the year, is quite expensive at them at both of the sites. So it's not as straightforward as you might think.
No, in some of these sort of places, the property is sold back to the parent company.
That's right. You can't just sell it to somebody you want to. You've got it. Yes. So I think sometimes it's more complicated. But I mean, I don't know what the value of them at the moment. I haven't looked to see. But
Craig has got his hand up.
Difference between 68 and 200 odd, isn't there?
Yeah. But Craig has got his hand up, so perhaps he can give us some better information on it. Craig?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's unfortunate the affordable housing officer is in the room. They're having technical properties connecting. Who'll be able to advise directly on this. But the value comes from two local agents. So the 229 was from two local agents. This property has been advertised for a number of months on Home Search, and my colleague Louise Corbett is just emailing me some more details. So it has been marketed. It's a two-bedroom property. It's been marketed by two local agents at that price, and that is the golden share price. So this financial contribution we will get will go back into the affordable housing stock. So at the moment, there isn't anybody to fill that property. It's been advertised as part of this affordable housing market. There's been no uplift from it. Nobody's coming forward to take up this property. Therefore, taking it out of that market and having a financial contribution to provide affordable housing elsewhere is considered a much more appropriate use. There just isn't the demand for this, and the affordable housing officer has been dealing with this with the applicant for a very long time now, and there is obviously overhead costs with the monthly service charge as well. So this is considered to be the best option. It's really unfortunate that Louise Corbett isn't able to address the planning committee directly, but she is in full support of this contribution being taken out, and it is considered to be the most appropriate way to deal with this site going forward, rather than having a unit which isn't doing anything for people and vulnerable people who are in need. This money could be used much better elsewhere.
Right, thank you, Craig. Councillor Clark, do you wish to come back in?
Yes, please. I understand what Craig's saying. Surely the answer is going to be 30% of what the final settlement figure is for whoever purchases it. So that should really be the figure, not an estimate of what an estate agent thinks.
Right, thank you. I'm in darkness again and I daren't move because I'll be tripping over wires in here. I don't know what is wrong with the lights in this actual office that I'm sat in. But I think we've discussed it now. Thank you, Councillor, for turning the lights back on again.
Madam Chair, just to confirm, the Christie's and Bidman Cook have both valued it at 229, and the Golden Share, which is the 30% of the affordable housing, is £69,000. So my colleague Louise Corbett is just confirming that.
Right, thank you very much, Craig, and thank you for Louise. At least you've got your been able to communicate through Craig. Right, so I think we will go to the vote on this. Anybody wishes to move?
I'll move.
Right,
Maureen.
you move for approval. Is it Councillor Powell?
Yes.
I'll second.
And Councillor Clark has seconded. Could I have something in the chat bar, please? Right, you can now vote now. It's in the chat bar. If you haven't, please let me know. It's gone again.
What, the light?
No, I'm fine. The light is still here. I can see what I'm doing at the moment.
We've now had 12.
My chat bar is not open, Madam Chairman.
Right. Do you wish to verbally give your vote, Councillor Higgins?
Yeah, I vote for the
proposal.
Yes.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Higgins, and it will be noted.
So including Councillor Higgins's verbal vote, we've now got 10 for approval and 3 against approval. So it looks like 3 councillors haven't been able to vote, but in any event, that's a clear vote for approval of that motion.
Right, thanks very much, Denzel. Right, the other item that's now on the agenda is the information on appeals from the inspectorate. So who's taking that?
I voted for. I've been shouting my head off the dark.
Councillor Dovey has now come across to say he's voted for approval. Who's taking the planning appeals?
Yes, I'm happy to very quickly run through those.
Right, thank you, Phil.
The emphasis on quick.
Yes.
Can people see the screen that I'm sharing, or is it still on there?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So, right, bear with me a moment.
Right, we can see you, Phil.
Can't see it myself now. Right, just so I can orientate myself. Right, from current slide. So, can people see that? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So the first application was an appeal at Puthmyrick Lodge. There's a large house to the right-hand side of the picture, and that's its garage set behind walls and a gate. They were planning to create a further dwelling by converting the garage and building above it. But it would have created, that's the unit there. But as you can see by the size of the dwellings around, it would have created really incongruous, small development, which would have looked out of place. So it was refused, and there would have been an associated revised garage where that block is there below it. That's the unit there. It wasn't particularly attractive either, quite a contrived looking development. And that was the garage that would have resulted in it. But anyway, it was refused, and the inspector agreed that it would have been an overdevelopment of the plot and looked out of character and been incongruous. So it was a useful one to win. And then the second one was at Worthybrook Farm, which was a conversion of the stone building there you see to the left of the picture, but then also linking it up with all the various block utilitarian buildings to create one dwelling. And the inspector again agreed with us, and this was a member decision supporting officers on the recommendation to refuse, that it was not in accordance with the rural conversion policy. There's far too much use of utilitarian buildings and new build, so it wasn't in accordance with policy. So it was dismissed. So that's those in a nutshell, and that's it.
Thank you, Phil. Right, I think that's the end of the applications and the appeals for today, and I thank you all in your attendance, and we will see you, if everybody's here and keeping safe and not celebrating too riotously over Christmas, and keep calm, and please abide by all the rules, and we'll all have a lovely Christmas and New Year and meet again here for Planning Committee. Thank you all very much indeed.
Thanks, Chairman. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank
you, Chair.
Thanks, bye. Chair. Merry Christmas.